wherever you're listening from. My name is Kalu, and today we are back on our Twitter Spaces. We call it the Money Space. Out here, we're talking money, the economy, finance, of course, personal finance, right? We want to talk about money, but how it relates to you on a personal level. So all week, right? All week, I would even say all month, we've been talking about the Naira, the cashless policy, the difficulty in getting physical Naira out. It's affecting the economy, it's affecting your budget and your households, right? There are a lot of issues out there, some that are legal, but some that are economic, but it's always personal, right? So we want to just really understand this Naira, this currency, this CBN cash policy. What is currency in circulation? Should cash be in the banks? And all those questions you really want to get a definite official understanding of. That's what I want to just basically talk about today. So we've got a guy that knows. We've got an economist, a real economist, right? Wilson is here, which I'm going to make him just introduce himself. And then, of course, we can ask him our questions. Of course, these spaces are all recorded on Twitter. It's recorded. And after the Twitter spaces, we do have a recording on a podcast. The podcast is the way I see it. You can search for it. It's on Google Podcast, Amazon, Spotify, everywhere you can find this podcast. We also do a post on the YouTube. So many ways for you to listen and go back and just review what you heard. But it's always there for you in hard copy. So Wilson, good morning, good evening, sir. If you want to just unmute, introduce yourself, and then we can just get started. I guess we can start with introductions.
Yes, hello, Carlo. I hope you can hear me.
Very well, very well.
Yes, thank you so much for the invitation. I've joined your space a couple of times, and I think it's awesome. And I also like the way you break down some of these economic jargons, especially when you get your guests to come in. So, so it's a pleasure for me to be here.
Thank you so much.
My name is Wilson, and I am a senior economist with the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. The NESG. I've been with the NESG for almost a decade, working on fiscal policy, monetary policy, industrial, economics, what have you, anything as far as it concerns the economy. I'm also, I also teach economic development for Africa at SOAS, University of London. And so I think maybe I should just stop there because I wear so many hats. So
thank you so much. Thank you, Wilson. We're grateful that you took the time to just come and just educate us on all these matters. We're really grateful. Thank you so much. So let's just dive into it. And just to say, we had planned this space to talk about other things, the economy, GDP. If time permits, we will, because once we do the initial discussion in Naira, we're going to ask folks they're going to have questions. So if time permits, we will, of course, ask folks to ask questions. But let me just get right into it, sir. Let's just start at the very, very top. CBN, even way back in 2022, said there was cash in circulation and then there was cash in the bank. So you asked about 3.3 trillion cash in circulation, but in the banks, they said it was about 500 billion. Explain this to us. Just break it down to us. Should cash be in the banks? Should cash be in the economy? What is this cash in circulation? Just give us a breakdown, just so that we follow and understand.
Yeah, thank you. I think basically what currency in circulation means is the amount of money, printed by the government that you basically use to drive economic activities, what you use to buy, to sell, and it's often the most liquid aspect of all the different types of money. I mean, it falls categorically under the M1, which basically includes currency outside the bank and, the monies you have in your checking account, which some would call current account, as we do in Nigeria. So currency, in circulation has two types, like you mentioned. The first is currencies that you have outside the bank, which the currency you have in your pocket, the one you use to pay for. goods and services. I mean, some people have them under their pillows. Some people have them in their holy books, different places. I mean, some people have them stashed somewhere. It's basically money that you use to buy goods and services. The other aspect of currency in circulation is the ones you have in your bank, and the aspect that you can easily go to the bank and withdraw without any form of, notice, not the type of, say you have like a fixed deposit or something. I mean, this is something you have in your account that you can just walk into the bank and you demand for it immediately and you will get it. So a combination of these two is what you, if you sum them up, and if you also look at the CBN website, money and credit statistics, the breakdown of all the different categories of money from M1 to M2 to M3, right? So if you add, for currency in circulation, if you add currency outside the bank and currency, in the bank, particularly the aspect of it that is very liquid, that's when you have currency in circulation. Now, with the CBN policy, what the CBN was worried about is that, we had 3.2 trillion currency in circulation, as at, I think, September or so last year. And the CBN was saying that, look, much of that currency in circulation, majority of it are outside the bank. So you have about 2.73 trillion, which is 85% of total currency in circulation outside the banking system, right? Which is the money we have in our pockets, like I mentioned earlier. Now, only about 500 billion is what we have in the bank. So the CBN is putting forward an argument that with that case, it means that, when monetary policy is often not effective, when they raise interest rates or they want to influence money supply, the fact that much of the money is outside the banking system makes that transmission mechanism of monetary policy very weak. Like maybe, for instance, the government wants to address things like inflation. Already, much of the money is outside the banking system. So when the CBN raise rates, how much of that will affect the household or purchasing power of households if majority of money is outside the banking system. So this is, one of the key arguments of the central bank, and what the CBN also, cited in that release was issues relating to. Yeah. So what the CBN also, I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay, I hear you very well.
Okay. Yeah. So what the CBN also cited were issues relating to counterfeits, clean Naira notes, trying to promote cashless economy to prevent hoarding, address issues relating to insecurity and kidnapping.
Yeah.
So that's basically what the CBN is trying to do to ensure that, you get that money outside the banking system into the banking system. Whether that is right or not, I mean, I hold my own opinion. Maybe I'm sure we'll discuss that.
Yeah, sure. So just to be clear, so that the cash in my pocket, the cash in the bank, that is currency in circulation. But the cash in the bank is the one that CBN is saying there's cash in the bank, there's cash in my house. CBN is saying the cash in my house is the problem because when they raise interest rates, it doesn't affect the cash in my house because I can take the cash in my house and buy and spend. That's CBN's argument.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the second.
And we must also remember that there are also money in the bank that does not count as money, currency in circulation, right? In the sense that those type of money that are not liquid. So when you look at the definition of money and the different categories, you have M2 and M3. Right, M2, would capture things like what we call M1, which is currency in circulation, and then what we call quasi money. Monies that, for instance, money market instruments, treasury bills, and all of those. Those are, different forms of money because those are assets, that people invest in. But M3 is also M2 plus monies that the CBN bills, bills that the CBN issue as well. So there are different categories of money, but the main focus now is on the M1 aspect, which is currency outside the bank and currency, within the bank that are easily accessible by people for daily transaction.
Okay, so the question now to you, sir, is this. Should money be in the banks? It might sound like a stupid question, but should money be in the banks?
Well, in layman terms, I think money should be everywhere, either in the bank or outside the bank.
Okay.
Right. And one of the issues I have with the current policy, right, is that how much money should be in circulation, right? What the CBN has done, and if you look at all of the CBN circulars, they've released almost close to 10 circulars on this issue, right? In all of the circulars, I'm not sure I've seen anywhere where the CBN cited issues relating to currency in circulation as a percentage of GDP, right? That's you can't just. It's almost like you're. What the CBN has done is just to look at face value, the Naira value, and say, currency in circulation has increased from, I think, 1.8 trillion in December 2015 to 3.2 trillion in September 2022, right? And typically, it's not just enough for you to look at face value. We need to know how much money should be in circulation. Like, so what's the ideal percentage of money that should be in circulation as a share of GDP? And when you look at currency in circulation as a percentage of Nigeria's GDP, what you would find is that, at best, in 2021, where we have a full year data, is 1.9%, right? In 2015, when the CBN, the CBN cited figures from 2015, it was 1.6%. So, and then you have countries that are doing way high, at 23%, even countries that have a much more advanced financial system, payment system, some of them have very high, share of currency in circulation to GDP. So my own take is money should actually be used to purchase goods and services. And bearing in mind that we also run a very large informal economy, which many people have also argued over time, right? So for me, I that's one of the things I find, like, I was struggling with when the CBN came up with the policy, because as far as I'm concerned, all of the economic goals that the CBN is putting forward on the economic reasons why some of these things are happening are not clear, right? So I want to assume that I think it's maybe heavy on the political side in terms of election, curbing all of those other issues, counterfeiting, and all of those things, rather than the economic argument that the CBN is putting forward, which, in my view, I don't think they are strong enough to warrant the kind of policies we're seeing, especially at the pace that they're implementing this. So, in a nutshell, to answer your question directly, money should actually be in the bank and also be in the pockets of people.
Okay.
One way we should measure that is cash as a percentage of GDP, and it's really low. So I don't think there's anything for us to worry about,
Okay. And Doc, let me just give the figures, right? For those listening. In Nigeria, it is 1.9, like you said, of GDP, i.e. cash in circulation, about 1.9. In the US, they have about 2.3 trillion in circulation. That's 9.1% of their GDP. 9.1% of their GDP is cash in circulation. In the UK, it's about 82 billion. That's about 3.2% of their GDP. In the Eurozone, it's about 10.5% of their cash in circulation. And this is a good chart I got it from Taiwo, or your friend, the tax guy. And he broke it down even by way of dollar per citizen. In Nigeria, it's $34 per capita, i.e. per cash in circulation, $34. In the US, it's about 6,700 per capita. In the UK, it's about 1,500 per capita. In the Eurozone, about 3,000 per capita. So it just buttresses your argument that cash in circulation might seem a lot when you say 3.3 trillion. But by GDP, by breaking it down to the individual Nigerian, that's just $34 per individual. You can't even pay for a Twitter space blue check with that amount, for over 6 months. So the cash is not really there. But I want to emphasize the point you made, that it looks more like this is targeted more at the counterfeiting and the politics and the terrorism than the economic argument. It's tilting that way.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is this cash is CBN also mentioned that they want to fight inflation by addressing the cash in circulation. Is this also true? Can I really fight inflation if I change the Naira or do cashless policy? Because CBN governor said this clearly. I highlighted it clearly to folks. He said there will be less cash after this policy, which is what is happening now. He literally said it. Is he going to fight inflation, or will inflation come down because there's less cash? What's your take on this?
Well, for inflation, right? I think this is coming from the monetary angle, especially. I mean, if you follow the history of monetary policy over time, and if you read the works of Milton Friedman, right, you would see they often argue. One of the key arguments is that increase in money supply is one of the key drivers of inflation, and when there's too much money in the system, right, people will be tempted to want to spend buy goods, and then the prices of goods and services keep going up over time. I mean, you even argue that during the Great Depression in 1929 in the US, right, that part of the reason was because there was not enough money in circulation. So, prices were low, demand was low, and all of that. So they argued that one of the solutions is to pump more money into the system to get prices up. For the CBN, right? And also, if I move to the CBN, one of the arguments of the monetary economists would be that what is the growth of money supply as a percentage of your GDP over time, right? We've done the shift, but this time, if you look at the growth rates, right, money supply has almost doubled over time from 2015 till now. By money supply, I'm talking about currency in circulation. But also, if you look at Nigeria's nominal GDP, right, it's almost doubled also from 2015 till now. Not real GDP. Real GDP takes into consideration inflation, right? But if you discount or if you remove that inflation effect, you look at the nominal values of GDP. I think, because we don't have full year 2022 figures, so if you use 2021, we're talking about an 84% growth. If you look at, maybe an estimate for 2022, almost 100% nominal GDP growth over time, end to end period. That's 1 point, right? So, but the monetarists would argue that if money supply is growing faster than GDP growth, right, or the capacity of the economy to produce, that's when you should be worried more about inflation. Now, for the CBN, and one of the things they're arguing, is that this would fight inflation. Already, we are seeing purchasing power dropping by many Nigerians. The fact that you can't even access this money to transact, right? I mean, maybe not purchasing power, but the fact that the money is not there. You can't. There are people who cannot really transact and do business as they want to, or buy things in as much as they would have if they had that money, right? Now, the problem with that is you could see a case where inflation rate will drop, right? Maybe marginally. But then we also know that a drop in inflation rate, first of all, does not necessarily mean that prices will fall. I mean, those are two different things. Inflation already, once it's above zero, it means that prices are increasing, right? So if inflation is 20% last month and this time is 15%, it just means that the rate at which prices have increased is what is slowing down, not necessarily the fact that prices are falling. Prices rose by 20% last month, but this month it rose by 15%. That's what it means.
So just make sure that people are following you. So what you're saying is that if the price of gala goes up from 100 naira, inflation is 10%, right, and it falls to 5%, it does not mean the price of gala has gone down. It simply means that the rate at which the price of gala has gone up is what's coming down. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. So some people often read when they see inflation numbers drop a bit, maybe from right now it's around 21.8%, maybe it drops to 20%. Some people would say, "Oh, it's a lie. It's not. Prices are going up every day." So what that means is that it's just the rate of inflation measures changes in the measured by the CPI. It changes in the index. So that's basically what but so it not necessarily mean that it doesn't necessarily mean that prices have dropped. Just means that the pace at which it is increasing is what is slowing down gradually.
Okay.
So with this idea of using this policy tool to fight inflation, in my view, I think I don't see how reasonable that is. Even if prices are going down, right? And remember, you're using the monetary side to fight inflation. What we should expect also is the fact that output should drop. In the first quarter of this year, we should start seeing a case where GDP growth slows even below expectation. If you expect it to grow at 2%, right, it would grow, lower than that. Because if people are not buying these goods, remember, there's a transmission mechanism. If you don't buy as much goods as you should, this will also affect production. Producers would think of ways, imagine you're selling tomatoes, right, and people are not buying your tomatoes. What would you do? Right, you are selling some perishable goods. You would reduce your stock, use your capacity to get more of these goods. So ultimately, it will lead back to production of goods and services. And what that means is that you are almost like causing a slowdown in economic activities, which again, you could argue that they are all linked to things like employment, job creation. I mean, if you look at the recent Nigeria 2050 agenda, right, we expect that the plan is that Nigeria should be growing at a rate of 7%, 8% on average, and then all of this happening to address inflation. I don't think it really makes sense, right? And there's an aspect of it which is the ways and means, which we could talk about later. But for inflation, there are also so many cost, push factors that I think should be the main focus of policymakers, whether maybe the monetary policy side can be limited to address those problems, but the fiscal side needs to focus on those ones, and those ones are where if you address them, will not necessarily affect production, as it were, rather than using the monetary tools to influence inflation.
Doc, before I dive into inflation issue, I've shared two infographics. One, the currency in circulation. So, guys, click on the Twitter, my Twitter feed. I've shared the currency in circulation from 2017 all the way to 2021, both by value and by key. So this is from the CBN. Also shared the infographic about the currency in circulation per capita. So you can see comparison between Nigeria, UK, Euro, and all that. But Doc, you mentioned it, you brought it up, so I'm just going to go there, right? As of 2021, the currency in circulation was about 3.3 trillion. In 2017, it was 2.1 trillion. So it's an increase from 2.1 trillion to 3.3. The 23 trillion that has been quote unquote printed, where would it fall? Would it be under currency in circulation? Would it be bond? Where would it fall? We know it's not all. Where would it fall on this table? That 23 trillion want to do the bonds for 40 years and all that. Where would it fall?
Well, for those are assets. Those are as government assets, right? So for those, you would not necessarily capture that from that currency circulation, even though some of those monies, of course, would make its way to the citizens, whether through government spending and all of that. But like I mentioned earlier, different categories of money: M1, M2, M3. Right, so those are it will fall within the M2, M3 bracket, especially when you look at the definition of quasi money, which looks at some of the long-term instruments that are close to maturity, and for those that are not close to maturity, they would fall under M3 category. So M3 captures M1, M2, and then bills that are held, CBN bills that are held by the money holding sector. Okay, so it tends to block the bills that are held by the money holding sector. So it will fall under, majority of it will fall under the M3 category.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here. The CBN printed 23 trillion. Let's say they printed 1 trillion. That's an overdraft to the federal government of Nigeria. The federal government that takes that overdraft, then it pays salaries to workers, right? That's what it uses. It takes the overdraft from CBN It pays workers' salaries. Has it printed? I'm a worker in the federal government. I receive my salary. That money is money I'm going to spend at ShopRite. So does that money now not become quote unquote currency? It's not M1, M2, M3. It's money in my pocket as salary. I give it to my wife or to my kid. Then my kid has that money in University of Nigeria. He's going to spend it. So is it a pass through from the printing to the currency?
Absolutely. So what happened is, when the ways and means comes in, not everything did not come into the economy at the time, right? We must also remember that when households get money or when businesses get money, not all of that stays in the bank, not all of that stays in people's pockets. Some of them are also invested in government securities, right? Some of those monies are used to buy government bonds. Some of those monies are used to buy treasury bills or even commercial papers and all of that. So yeah, for the salary part, and then it also depends on what households use that money for. So if the household uses that money that they get from the government, right, the part of the 23 trillion that they get, and they use it to buy, say, a long-term government bond, for instance, I mean, it wouldn't count as money in circulation, currency in circulation, rather. So if they use it to, keep in their pockets, they use it to buy goods and services, they keep in their, accounts, current accounts, and all of that, then you can categorize it as currency in circulation.
But I'm going to press you again.
3 trillion that you would count as currency in circulation. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a figure of 3.2 trillion, that the CBN is putting.
And that's where I'm going to. That's where I'm going to, right? And I'm going to press you again on this, right? Again, let's say they printed 1 trillion. So from 2017, we had 2.1 trillion. All the way to 2021, we are at 3.3 trillion. So it's a very, very slow graph. It doesn't really spike up. But we've printed over this period, right, I would say about 18 trillion. So the question is that when we look at the NBS has a study that says 67% of the average household spend for a Nigerian family is on food. So when I get my salary as a level 12 civil servant working in the Ministry of Works, I'm going to give it to my kid that is in school. I'm going to give it to my wife. I'm going to spend my money. We are spending about 67% of that salary on food at home. My kid is buying food at home. That money is literally cash. Even if it's paying cashless, it's cash, right? So why is it not showing up in this 3.3 trillion in 2021? Where is the money? This is what I think my question is: where is this 23 trillion? I get the point of view about M1, M2, M3, but this money has been spent. It doesn't show up on the CBN. Doesn't you said it's only going to show up on the government side, i.e., the bond. Where is this money?
Well, I think this question you're asking is one question that we all have been asking for years. But my own sense of understanding is that if you look at M3, which is money supply, as of December 2022, it's actually 52 trillion naira. This is data from the CBN, right? So, and again, if you look at government spending, for each year, I mean, there was a time I did a chart that tried to show where government puts money. Much of those monies, you remember debt servicing cost, right?
Yeah.
Is also very huge. So if you look at say in the budget you see debt servicing as a share of total expenditure at around is often like 22%, almost a quarter of the budget, 25% rather, almost a quarter of the budget, in some cases 26%.
Yeah.
But if you then look at the actual, right, what's not the budget now, what the government has spent in the financial year, right? The latest available data is from January to November in 2022. I mean, figures for December were not ready when they started the presentation. So what you would find is that 40% of total government expenditure goes into debt servicing, right? Paying servicing all the debt you owe, and who are the owners? Who are the creditors to the government?
Oh my
These
God.
are individuals who securities, investing in the stock market, investing all across the different areas, right? So that in itself, I think, is a huge chunk. So it's almost like we're borrowing money to, I mean, it's not even normal, but like we're borrowing money to service, money that we owe, and then it keeps going back into the system. So that's where I think a huge part of that money would, go into that aspect,
let me say for you, sir. Let me say it for you. So what? And this is what I was going to do. This is what I was doing. So it's in essence, the federal government of Nigeria is going to the central bank of Nigeria to borrow money. Then it takes that money that was borrowed to pay holders of its debt. That's why we don't see the money show up in the 3.3 trillion, but we see it show up in the 2 trillion. That money is borrowed to service the debt of the federal government. So if I own federal government bonds, I'm getting free money. My kid in school, he's not really seeing that money in terms of cash to him to consume, or a road or a bridge. It's really money that is just flowing in the circular flow. Government, banks, central bank. Government, banks, central bank.
Yes,
Am I on the
absolutely.
target?
So I think that's what the issues, beyond the fact that, we've talked about this, oftentimes the fact that the government keeps, this is that exceeded the 5% in the CBN Act and all of that.
Gotcha.
Issues of, accountability, transparency of where exactly is this money going to, and some of the act, the Fiscal Responsibility Act actually says that some of these accountability mechanisms are there to say whatever money you spend, you need to show where all of this money is, where it's going to, what it is used for, and all of that. But whether we follow them or not is another thing. So I just put up that chart that I did one time. So debt servicing account is 5.24 trillion for last year, 41% of total budget. The other large expenditure is personnel costs, salaries, and co. And then which is 31%. So if you look at the budget, 76% of some of the funds of the total expenditure is going to personnel costs, overheads, and debt servicing. So that's where much of the money is going to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Doc, the final question, we spent about 30 minutes talking to you. Lots of guys here want to speak to you. Let me ask you my final question before, and it's going to be two questions. What do you think went wrong in this cashless rollout? There are two policies. I think we mixed them up. There's the cashless, there's the Naira redesign policy, and both happen are being missed. The words are being sort of like used together. What, in your view, really happened in December? Is it that there was did not print enough cash on purpose, or that the demand for the cash that was printed was simply too much, or that the telcos, the fintechs, the telcos and the banks failed? What's your sense? Because the numbers, if you look at the numbers, composition of e-payment transaction, as of 2021, the internet, 69% of Nigerians do their e-payments via the internet. POS is less than 10%. Less than 10%. But the noise you hear is that there is no cash in the POS. But the bulk of the transactions are done on the internet. The POS is less than 10%. The share is still the internet and NEFTs. ATMs is 2%. POS 2%. The composition ATM is about here is about 10%. POS that's also 10%. So what happened? Did we didn't print enough cash, or there was too much volume, or somehow this POS guys or the internet guys were just simply overwhelmed by demand? What do you think happened?
I think it's a combination of all of them. That data you cited, for me, I think these are, when we talk about some of those currencies within the banking system, people who have some level of education, people who can use, some of these services that you mentioned, right? I mean, you are already limiting it to those category of individuals. There are so many people. And I think one of the key things that with this policy that, what it showed, and especially the way we've implemented is we don't understand this Nigerian economy that we often talk about. some people just think it's about, Lagos, especially from some of these policymakers. They think the economy is about, what we see in Lagos. People can be motivated and buy some of the data you find and you say, oh, transaction is increasing. But there's so many aspects of our economy that is not captured, right? Whether it's in terms of GDP, whether it's in terms of trade, whether it's in terms of money circulation. In fact, I don't think some of these 3.2 trillion money that we see largely underestimated because there is so much money in the system that we have not even captured in the first place. So, and then when you make a policy like this, by, you give a deadline, I mean, it's just coming off, short announcements. It's almost like we're following the Indian template, right? You just come up with very short announcements, you give a deadline. I mean, there's so many people, so many Nigerians who are not, banked at all. If you look at the finance data on financial inclusion, right? Financial exclusion rate in Nigeria is somewhere around 36%. Right? So many people who should actually or who fall within that age bracket that should be or should have access to banking services or abroad. So many of them do not have that. And then the policy then affects them in a way, the fact that their money will not be legal tender anymore. So I think it's an underestimation, or I'm just trying to be nice here. It's an underestimation of what the Nigerian economy is really about. If you look at the 1,500 naira notes, I mean, you shared one data with me that showed the breakdown of those notes, those three notes, all of the notes rather. But for 1,500 and 200 notes, you will find that they account for 48% of the total note, right? The latest note, I think, is 1,000 was printed how many years ago? 15 years ago or something. You have about 1.9 billion notes of 1,000, 1,000 naira. For 500, you have 2 billion. For 200, you have 1.2 billion. So all of these is 5.1 billion. And you want to get all of these in a short period of time, in less than 3 months, when it took you almost over decades to pump those money into the system. It just can't, it just can't work, right? No matter how prepared you think you are not. You can't withstand the heavy influx of the shock that you would, get to receive. So that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing is leading to some of these social problems that we have because people work hard for the money. The other thing is in terms of clarity on the goals. What is the CBN goals in terms of KPIs? What are you specific about? And I don't like when I hear things like, oh, we have collected 900 billion, is remaining 900 billion. Why don't we benchmark this as a percentage of the production of our economy, what we produce? What is the cash in circulation as a share of GDP that the CBN is trying to target, right? And I think I should make this point very important. Our policy goals need to be very clear, and there's something we always do, especially when it comes to the policy side for Nigeria. Because there are issues with a few sections or a few people or an aspect of an economy, we would make policies that would punish everybody, right? So we did it with the border closure. We had issues with neighboring countries, smuggling of rice and all that. What did we do? We shut all the borders, all the land borders. We did it with whether a Twitter ban or something. Once you have an issue with someone or maybe you shut everything. And I don't think that approach to policy making would help us going forward. It will only cause chaos as we keep going, if we keep following that approach. The other thing is, capacity of the digital payment system, which you've talked about, issues relating to literacy, right? So 68% level of literacy is really very low. And when you look at across states in Nigeria, there's a huge disparity in that regard. Access to internet, only 21% of women use internet. This is according to the 2021 MICS survey. So before we make policies like this, we should have captured and covered all of this to see how we can effect the timeline and say, okay, what best approach can we use to address this?
Maybe this, just to close this last one, so I want to have the speakers. Maybe this should have just simply been we want to target counterfeiting, terrorism, and politics, and they just focus directly on that and leave the rest of us alone. I mean, Doctor, I hear you completely. Let's run the table. Again, if you're just joining, we're speaking with Dr. Wilson. He's an economist, senior economist with the NESG, but he's here because of capacity to speak to us about the Naira, the currency, and all the issues around that, right? And we're just about 40 minutes in. So let's bring Akin. Akin, I'm just going to go as I see you guys. Akin, you've got the floor. Please unmute to ask your question. Go for it.
Okay, so my question is about the issue of turning Nigeria into a cashless society. Which don't be doing that. And it seems to me as the CBN is overstepping its boundaries. It's not exactly doing well on its main metrics or the main scorecard that is very well. It's going to be for cashless and financial inclusion and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, it's a simple question, Doctor. I mean, again, this is an argument people have had. We've had cashless banking since 2012. Why the speed December 2022? Was cashless used as a cover to do the other non-monetary activities? I mean, that's the really question here. I can and everyone asking. What's your take, Doc?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think perhaps that could be the solution, the answer to that question. I think it's just beyond what we see, in the surface, right? It's not. I don't think the goal is for. I don't think the cashless policy, that they're implementing. I don't think that should be the main factor behind this. Otherwise, we could have extended the deadline and said, okay, let's do this within the next 1 year. And then let's see how many people would, embrace cashless economy and cashless digital tools. So it's short notice, that farmers having a system for me, like I know how that deadline, so when I should point to that point that over time, we will see some of the benefits, right? Because everything is not, as economists, you would have, on the one hand, I mean, someone said, show me an economist with one hand. It seems like we all have on the other hand, right, two hands. So, on the benefit side, you could see, maybe in the next few years, a lot more people would have, come onto the digital payment system and all of that. But again, at what cost? I think that's my concern.
That is true. I think I support the cashless, and I see in a lot of videos now. I saw a Kombi bus driver with his flashing his payments module. I saw women selling pepper, accepting all this. So I think you're right. Overall, it's a good policy, but I just think people are brushed by the quickness and harshness of the policy. Let's get EK in here. If I take you off, guys, just because I want to create space for speakers, so if you stay, I'm just going to drop you on the speaker list so I can add more. EK, you got the floor, sir. Go ahead.
Hi everyone. I don't know where games are missing from, but you basically answered most of the questions I have, most of my concern, and then you did that really like idea when you talk about sometimes when we read the Nigerian economy from the Lagos perspective. Sometimes it's not just progress alone. So sometimes what we do lately, when I was working, I would take out Lagos, take out Abuja, city, and then you just tend to look at Nigeria differently when you take out Lagos, maybe Abuja. To be honest, this policy from the very beginning was poorly designed. And when we discussed about it last year, I did mention to you that the major issue I have with this policy is the way it has been designed. And most of the objectives that the government set out to achieve, what they told us is definitely different from what they intend to achieve. The sole purpose of this policy is just to solve vote buying. That is just the whole truth. And nothing more than truth. So any other thing that someone else wants to say, he just trying to tell us, oh, there are other benefits. Yes, there are other benefits that are common with it. But the ultimate purpose of this is just to stop vote buying. And citizens are going to suffer because of this. And they are suffering because of this, unfortunately. Another news we want to know the question: why is going to exit in less than 2-3 months? My question for Wilson is this: I don't be able to fix this myself. Can this trigger inflation for us? The next president of Nigeria, is it going to be facing an inflation when it comes into government? Should we be worried about a recession, not inflation, a recession, whatever? Is there any chance that Nigeria will flip into recession because of this policy? Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think whether or not we will fall into a recession, I think to be a combination of many things beyond this policy, even although we're feeling we're going to feel the impact, especially when we start to see GDP numbers for Q1. Yeah, and the projection is that for the year Nigeria will grow at 3%. If you look at almost the World Bank, the IMF, I think the World Bank revised to 2.9. Yeah, but the IMF 3%, and almost all of the predictions are around that range. So I don't see a case where there will be a recession, especially in the next 2 quarters. But what I see is a case where growth will significantly be lower than expected. So we may not achieve that 3% growth that we set for that is projected for this year. Maybe somewhere around 2.2, 2.1. But again, all of these, I did a presentation at Cambridge, last month in November, and one of the things that came out was that all of these outlook that we're seeing, the elections and the outcomes, right, of the elections, as well as whatever happens after, we don't know what will happen. Nobody knows whether in the next 2-3 months what will become of the whole situation. I don't like to panic, but then I don't like to raise fears. But all of that and how everything would play out is what will determine, Nigeria's trajectory, this year. So I can't really tell whether we would fall into a recession. There's so many unknowns. But then I don't think things will be much more better, especially especially in the first half of this year.
Okay, you're talking about the floods. We haven't counted the floods in and all that. So when you put in the floods, put in the slowdown, it might get ugly. It might get ugly. All right.
Yeah.
Let's take open arena. Open arena. Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, Karen and Wilson. Very informative. Yeah, so I have just two questions. And the first one is this. How does it work? When there are policies being enforced or something that matters like this and affects everybody, who determines who is prior to the details of the policy in a country like this? Who determines that? Now, the next question with this, if there is talk about CBDCs somewhere in this policy, are we still in support of something like that?
Interesting. That CBDC one, can you expatiate? Where are you going to be at? Do you need to throw more light to that question?
No, the same one. I'm questioning it in principle. I mean, yeah, just as simple as that. I mean, someone somewhere is telling us we must go to the CBDC. We have a voice that we have.
Are you for or against it though? Just decide.
You said what?
Are you for the CBDC or against going to the CBDC route?
Yes, I have words.
Gotcha. Okay. Wilson, you don't take a crack. He's asking basically how is it hype being made? Who decided we should do this now? Who did it run through? The CBN Act says who decides. It says CBN and the president if he directs. Do you have any other take on that?
Well, I don't actually. I think it's the CBN and the president, right? CBN, we've seen the CBN has been meeting with the president over time, right? So those are the main institutional players, that we can point to for a policy like this. The president has also addressed the nation. The CBN has released so many circulars, on this. So I think here it's more about the CBN and the president. I can't think of any other thing except maybe if you follow the news, there are also talks about politics. I don't think I want to go into politics in detail, but there are issues relating to, people have said some people are aggrieved and all of that. Maybe they're trying to push this, and all of that. But for me, I think the most important thing, right, that we need to also maybe talk about some other time is, how independent is our central bank, especially when policies like this, come up, right? Are they, is there any, is there anything coming from the central bank, which I think perhaps could be a question, but in my view, I think they are the architect of this policy.
Yeah, and just to dovetail on that, I think the law gives them independence. It's very clear in the law that they are independent. There are words like soul, SOLE, in that act. So they do have that law. I just think that they refuse to be independent, and I blame, like I said, the CBN governor has this all on himself. He played in that water of sharks, and I think the sharks have come back to bite him. All right, his second question was on the CBDC. Do you have any comment on that?
Okay, yes. For the CBDC, I think, the fact that we've come up with something and there's been, increased adoption over time. Right, looking at the figures, you see lots of, many of the banks have even adopted this on their platforms. They have, I mean, they have the option of you transacting in that aspect. But again, I'm not quite, optimistic when it comes to that, especially, with the way it's being announced, the way it's done. I think it could have, been done in a much better way. I mean, all of this, you cannot tie it to whether or not the CBN is, the capacity of the CBN to implement some of these, issues. And if you remember how it even started with the issues with cryptocurrency and all of that, so I'm just a bit worried about how this would particularly influence the economy, especially when you look at the informal aspect of it. Yeah. Right? I think the space is really, really competitive. Many of the banks have products, you can easily transact. So at the end of the day, so what's in it for me? Why do I need to use the CBDC, right? I mean, so in my view, I'm not so optimistic about it. And at some point, I was even asking, so what is the value of this, that we're bringing on board, when especially the private sector guys are, trying to make innovation, even though you see that there's still room for more growth, especially when it comes to, getting more people on board in the informal space. I see a lot of people using, some digital payment platforms like OPay, for even if you some taxi drivers and bus drivers are using those platforms, right? So why not the Naira, and all of that? So I honestly think that the private sector would do much more if we're able to enable them with policies and open up that space for a lot more players to come on board.
Okay, so again, the question, I think the conspiracy theory is that there's Naira, which is from the Central Bank of Nigeria, and then there's cashless banking. So the theory is that they want to push Nigerians from having cash to go to Naira, so that way the central bank, not just CBN, but central banks across, then have more control. Like what's happening in China. I think there in China, their own the digital yuan, the government can switch off and on, and they can track where you're spending. So if they pay you a salary, they see exactly where you spend that salary. And if they give you a stimulus and they say go spend, by the 10th of the month, if you don't spend it, it disappears. Poof. So I think that's one of all those conspiracy theories out there. It's real, but I think e-Naira is a great product. Just how we market it properly or explain to Nigerians what the real value is. But that's a different topic. Let's get Marv, M-A-R-V. Marv, you got the floor, sir.
Hello, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Really enlightening by your talks. And also, I'm just appreciative for the space that I've been following very well. And even during this period. What I would say is that I think Carlo has pushed more for, educated us more about going cashless than even the CBN has. And I really, so when they say, okay, we should go cashless, what efforts are they making? Are they putting in place for us to achieve this cashless economy? And I'm not really seeing so much effort. Like I think Carl mentioned something about what Kenya did, and I heard I've seen someone talk about like how he's seeing that we were able to transact. So those I've never really seen efforts by the government to help us really go cashless, help us achieve this cashless economy. And even going down to the rural areas or educating them on how they can transact through cashless policy. And also, they're just forcing us to go cashless, but the means by which we would achieve it, nothing is being done. To my own knowledge, I don't see effort that is being made to educate people on and even better means, better infrastructure to achieve this policy.
Let me ask a question. Let me ask a question. If it was okay, 100% seamless for you to pay cashless, so seamless, right? Seamless. You could buy anything, pay for anything, buy suya, but it would have no problems. Would you do cashless or would you do cash?
I would do cashless. I prefer, for me personally, I prefer to, even today, I think I cut my hair, I went to cut my hair, transferred, I've made, going to eat, transfer, I think in Lagos, I live in Lagos, and to a certain level, a lot of people, a lot of persons are trying to use transfers, but because of the influx, I think today, I went to a restaurant, my bank app was having issues, and I even tried to use USSD. So I had to like wait for a longer period after eating to just make the transaction. So the influx of activities like banking activities really online activities affecting the banks and all. So it's a good point. For me personally, okay, because I don't think, for instance, I don't think my mom, an example, she's not that educated. She lives in Benin, and for her to, she doesn't use an Android phone, and she uses touchlight like a phone that does not
Yeah,
browse.
I think you've answered the question. I think your question is good because what is it that your problem is the implementation, the failure rate,
Yes.
not the policy.
And the effort, they are not making efforts to
I
make
got you.
it work.
I hear you.
Like, imagine
No,
yourself all the
no,
time
I hear you.
on your page sensitizing people on what other countries have done, bringing out instances of what Kenya have done and other countries, what they've achieved with things. I don't see that from the government. I don't see encouragement from the government to say, okay, this is where we are going to, and this is what we want to achieve. This is where we are going to, how we can do this.
Yeah.
Let's just get them to get everybody along.
Gotcha. Good point. Wilson, do you have any take on really the economic advantage of cashless banking? Why is the CBN pushing cashless banking? What does it do to the economy in terms of politics?
Okay, in terms of politics. Okay.
No. Sorry,
Politics.
I'm talking to Wilson. I'm asking in terms of the policy. I want him to maybe if he's in the room, maybe give us a take on why cashless is good for the economy. So let me just give you the economic rationale behind cashless. So Mark, just listening.
Hello, sorry, is that for me?
Yes, I'm basically asking why cashless? Why is it that should we do this? Is it better for the economy if we go cashless, and why?
Oh, yeah. Oh, got it. I think it's in a way it's better than all of the options we have. I mean, we live in a digital age, right? Some countries are talking about the fourth industrial revolution. Even though some countries are still, some of the, let's say, leading countries or far I think about 23% of their cash in circulation is 20% of GDP's cash to GDP ratio rather is 23%, which is one of the highest in the world. If you look at that chart, you will see some of the developed countries that we often refer to. So, why cashless? I think one of the key things is ease, right? You can imagine, having to pay for goods and services with your phone. In some of these countries, it's not even ATM now. You can use your phone to tap in, and so your phone is almost like everything that you do. I think that it comes with a lot of ease. It comes with the fact that the government can also trace some of these transactions that are illicit, in the sense that people what you use the money for, like you mentioned with the China case, even though some would argue that where is the role of freedom, democracy, and privacy, and all of that. But I think for the greater good, the government can have easy tracking of some of these transactions, and those that are not legal can be easily traced. Issues relating to taxes as well, right? So if you come on board and you do much of these transactions and the government can see it, I think that's even one of the reasons for India when they did their own demonetization policy. I think they were quite heavy on trying to get taxes, people who don't pay taxes, because at the end of the day, it affects government revenue. The government will have to then borrow, and then it creates more problems for macroeconomic stability and all that. So, issues relating to access to credit, credit ratings. If you come on board, you have a profile, you use different digital payment platforms. You are easily identified. So when you then, it's more like a basis for building a credit system such that the banks can see that, you buy this, you spend this, and all that. They can give you credit, they can give you loans. You have credit limits and all of that. So I think coming beyond the fact that it's very easy to use and create that ease. There are also issues for government policy itself. To say where are people spending money towards. How do they ensure more transparency, and how do they even give people more credit to do that, and credit for mortgages for businesses and all of that. If you are known to a bank, you are more likely to get credit than someone who is not known in the first place. So I think these are just some of the benefits. There's so many benefits of it as well.
I know once, right? I went to Starbucks and I saw a sign there. Was it Starbucks or coffee store? There was a sign that says we don't accept cash, and the lady put her reasons on it. She said, number one, if I accept cash, I have to pay someone to count and keep the cash. So it costs me more, which I pass to you. And number two, if you pay me cash, I don't get credit instantly because I have to take the cash to the bank for it to reflect as actual sales. But if you pay using your phone, I get cash immediately, and I can use send the money immediately to buy supplies. That was how an explanation. It made perfect sense to me. I don't know it that way, but yeah, so it made sense to me. Just to educate me.
And then the cost of printing cash as well. By the CBN, the ability to print and manage these cash, moving cash, those vaults. Those are costs as well to the central bank. That at the end of the day, are there in the balance sheet. So I think going cashless, reduces those costs to a large.
Great. Thanks. Let's get to Zoma. Zoma, you got the floor. Go ahead, sir. Zoma E. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Calvert and Dr. Wilson. Really like this interaction we're having. I will be very quick. I was in Nigeria some weeks back, and it was crazy. I mean, this cash thing, I was right in the middle of the problem. But it got very interesting when I discovered that I could pay your Okada guy via bank transfer, because I told him I don't have cash. He said, "No, I'll take transfer." At first, and I was short. and I was able to pay the woman selling crayfish just before I ran away. I had to use money run away. I was able to pay for crayfish at the market using bank transfer. And although the woman said she didn't see she hadn't seen an alert, I don't know if she's gotten an alert now. But it's interesting to see that I think it's a blessing in disguise that gradually we might be letting our people to start getting towards the use of bank transfers or e-transfers, as the case may be. And I hope that the CBN can up on this to encourage people to start looking at that area. Now, I hear this rumor that, and I think it's true, that a lot of cash, old notes are still out there. These old notes maybe need to go back, whether it's a good omen from the CBN or not. But I think we need to have a lot of these bad old notes, the 500 and the 1,000 naira, going back to banks, going back to the coffers of government. Now, I have this question, which I'm very disturbed. You made a comment or a statement between the two, as you and Dr. Wilson, where the CBN does not have judicial power. They still need to go back and forth with the presidency. The last time I checked, when Soludo was the CBN governor, I remember he came up with this policy of trying to, I think push back 2 zeros against the dollar. I think then it was instead of 150 naira to the dollar, we can have $1 50 kobo. And then we had couple coins coming into circulation, and there was a lot of kickback from the presidency because, of course, a lot of people were talking to Daniel that this guy is doing. You're making it look like a small boy. He's making it look like a CFO. You don't have powers. So my question is this, because I remember this thing very well. Is it that the CBN, are you trying to tell us, or is there someone telling us that the CBN doesn't have complete control over certain monetary policies? Because we need to clear the air. Why are governors going to Supreme Court for court injunctions or whatever? I mean, that's crazy.
I got this. So, quick question, yeah. So, I just want to make sure I can just answer that question real quick. So just little request. So, the way it's done, the way that if you read the CBN Act and the Constitution, the way it's written, right, the institution of the CBN in its discharge of its duties, the word is that it is independent. So, in the way it's written, the CBN shall have independence, right, over the discharge of its duties. That's how it's written. Then there are monetary policies in that act that it can do on its own without going to the president. But when you now start to talk about this currency, and let me read the exact quote, so I'm not giving you. It says that the CBN can do it, i.e., it can determine legal tender, but it has got to get the directive from the president to change that currency. So the CBN has the sole right to issue currency. It says that it's the federal government and the state government and any other personal authority cannot issue currency or even a token. They can't even talk about legal tender. This is including the federal government. So only the central bank has got the sole right. This is section 17 of the CBN Act. The central bank has the sole act to issue currency. But then when it gets interesting, they then say that when they then want to do this redeeming of currency, that's when they have to go back to the government and say, hey, as directed to do so by the president, and after giving reasonable notice in that behalf. So it has to give the president notice, the president will give a directive to go ahead, it then gives notice, then the central bank can go ahead and redeem and redeem. So it's not an absolute right. But I think what I'm scared about is this. If you are suing the central bank because you don't like what you're doing, that means tomorrow you can sue them to reduce interest rate because they give you quote unquote reasonable notice. I think it's a non-starter. It's a very dangerous game being played. The guys in Bloomberg, and I'm saying this in quotes, are watching that the governor can wake up and issue his own directive on the currency. Remember, states cannot borrow in Nigeria internationally. They only borrow via the federal government. So what's going to happen tomorrow when a state wants to borrow money internationally and they go to the federal government? The state then say, "Oh, we want to borrow." Let's not get too messy with this, right? The states are, in my view, should stand down. I don't understand what the Supreme Court is actually over. It's clear. I'm not a lawyer, but it's written in black and white here. So I don't want to get into the legal side because we won't come out of it today. But I think good comments for you on that.
Okay. So Kanu, I really appreciate this. What you're saying technically is that this is the government actually impose martial law on the citizen. Shops or pharmacy shop in Kano also was shut down
Let me
because
be
they were
direct.
not receiving good news.
Let me be direct. Let me be direct. The states cannot do what they are saying they are going to do. The law says that even the federal government cannot talk legal tender. Only the central bank, section 17, the bank shall have the sole right of issuing currency notes and coins throughout Nigeria, and neither the federal government nor any state government, local government, or any other person or authority shall issue currency notes. So that's the central bank. But the law then says to change, to redeem, to do all that kind of stuff, the central bank has to get a directive from Mr. President, which they did. It doesn't mention states or local governments. You cannot force legal tender on this. If a currency is not legal tender, the central bank has said it's not legal tender, you cannot force people to accept it. You cannot.
I get you now. So what that means is that the Supreme Court actually flawed in passing that judgment.
They haven't passed a judgment. The Supreme Court says pause. Supreme Court, I believe, and someone else can put in now. Supreme Court says pause. And if you pause, are they saying pause that the old Naira notes are legal tender? That's where the governments are going. That pause means that the legal notes are old tender. But the law is saying that only the central bank can determine what is legal tender in Nigeria. And the Central Bank of Nigeria has said these notes are no longer legal tender. Now, the central bank can go back to the president and change that wording. It's also in the act that they can go back to the president and say, we want to make this currency legal tender, which is what they've done. That's why the president came out again and gave a new directive that says 200 naira is legal tender. It's also there in the law. So the president has now said, we've made this not legal tender. Following the law again, we've made it legal tender up to a certain period. So after that period, then the original notice by the central bank will then kick in. So you can't walk in and say, because if you say accept this as legal tender, what stops the governor saying if I write a piece of paper and I stamp it, this state government, that is also legal tender? What stops them doing so? So dangerous games we're playing. Remember, Nigeria is the states cannot borrow internationally; they borrow via the federal government. When you see the euro bonds, most of this is you don't want to give confusion to foreign lenders that the state government and the federal government are fighting over who can issue currency. It's a bad look. That's what I'll say. All right, so let's go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate
You are very welcome. Let's get James. James, on the floor. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you for your opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Wilson, and then thank you, Kanu, for hosting this space. I have two things I want to say. One is a question, and then the other one is more or less like I just think I need to push back a bit. But the first question is I would want Dr. Wilson to advise what's the safest way to approach making this with data that do not come across as representative. For instance, you had alluded to the fact that in Nigeria, more or less, you didn't give figure, but I think it's estimated that the informal sector is about 60%. So, but how you said it was using Lagos to make Lagos data to make decision for the entire country. So, from your experience, what's the best approach to making to making far-reaching decisions with the peculiarities of our data, knowing fully well that they are not very representative. I understand that you can sample economic data, but it's the underlying assumption that it is already homogeneous in a sense. So, but in this case, it isn't. That's the first question. Can I push back before he reacts or what?
We'll do a quick pushback. It doesn't matter the time. You answer the question. So talk to
So my pushback would be, I am a bit not comfortable when we have conversations and more or less come across as we try to play safe. The academic people, say we don't want to meddle into politics because it's dirty and all of that. But my point is this: I think every time we do things, it should have an implication for action. And if these kind of conversations come up, we should have points where we push them to the point where it should have implications for action. For instance, every some of the things that have been said here, I truly like them. But when we now step far and say we don't want to get into the politics of it, it's not really good because most of the middle class are protected. So it is only the middle class and the intellectuals that should be able to come out and say things. But apart from the fact that the findings of our intellectual work comes across as these are the recommendations, you should also be able to point out some things that people are doing that are dishonest. For instance, the governors going to the Supreme Court, they are well within their rights to seek redress. But to be silent as to say we do not really know who is right, who is wrong. I am not for the CBN.
The governors are wrong. I was very clear. I don't see it. The governors are wrong. If I wasn't clear, let me be very clear. The
It wasn't you. It wasn't
yeah.
you.
No, but I do. Please understand that people work for organizations, right? And even though you do a disclaimer and say I am speaking for myself, it's still going to be this person or this person is speaking. So people tend to stay away from those things, and you have to just respect that because So let's get Wilson to answer your first question. You were asking about where to get the data. So when you take over the Lagos,
no way to get data. What is the optimal approach to using data that are somewhat unrepresentative to make decisions like the particular case of Nigeria?
Okay, great question. Dr. Wilson,
Yeah, thank you for this. I think you made a very interesting point on the politics side. Well, for me, I think by saying I don't want to go into that, I think it's not because I don't want to. By the time we start talking about it, I don't think we will leave here today. And again, I think I will also mention some of the concerns as well. I'm not speaking for the energy, but we must also understand that, we recently hosted the three presidential candidates in the interview and all of that. We try to make everything, objective as possible, ask them the same questions and all of that. So, if I come here speaking, somehow someone would link everything to say, oh, yeah, supporting this and that. So that's the main reason why I may not want to go into that in detail. But then there are some areas because I believe strongly that economic policies largely influenced by politics. So where those things come up, I think we cannot avoid speaking on those issues. Now, in terms of the safest approach to policy making, if I get your question, I think for me, the data is not there in the sense, but there's some data we can keep out and then use to make policy decisions. But I think largely we don't do that in this country. It's almost like somebody just has an intention and wants to. And I'm not even speaking to this instance. There's so many other instances that we've seen where policies are made. If you study public policy, there are processes where you need to go through to before an idea becomes a policy, right? You need to do what the problem is, what are the gaps, what are the issues, what is the agenda, what are the policy options, right? So if I do this, what's the implication? If I do this, what's the implication? terms of policy appraisals, what tools do you have? How many bank branches are there? How many POS operators? How many, all of those things, put them on the table. What are issues with capacity and demand? What if, we get everybody to come on board and wants to access the bank? Do we have the capacity to deal with that? I think those are, standard textbooks. Many of our politicians go to Harvard, Kennedy School, and go, they learn these things. But it's just so sad that when it's time to make those decisions, so many interests come into play. So I don't think there's any textbook approach to that. It mainly depends on the person, right? And maybe also for us to start pushing for institutions to see how we can question some of these approaches and say, look, have you considered this? Have you considered that? Because at the end of the day, it will still come back. You will see areas where policy is killing businesses rather than the opposite, even though the intention is to help businesses. So I think it's just for us as players, institutions, when you see things are wrong, hold them accountable. In this case, go to the election, let all of these decisions influence your voting, right? I mean, if you're not happy with it, vote. If you're happy with it, vote as well. Let's try to get leaders that will be responsible when making some of these decisions and also consider all of the options. If there's time, I really wanted to point out on that CBN aspect and independence, right? If you read Article 4, the IMF Article 4, there's one point they made there, about the CBN itself and how the CBN needs to reduce the pressures of government officials at its board, right? And some of its committees. They mentioned that for instance, if you look at the artist, the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Finance is on the CBN board. I think in the year the accountant general as well is also on the CBN board. How much role do these players have in terms of influencing monetary policy? If it's in the sense of the president, right? We've seen cases where even country in Turkey sacked their CBN governor in 2019. The US and Canada, the issues in the CBN government just to mention what the president wants. Some people call it the ATM machine of the president, right? So I think issues about CBN independence, is becoming, something that a lot of countries are now paying attention to them. And for us in Nigeria, right, we have a case where the CBN was actually giving, ways and means in trillions to the government. I mean, that's one of the things that push for CBN independence. That's one of the things they are actually against, where the CBN is directly funding the government deficit. And the thing is, when you do this kind of monetary financing, you close eyes to areas where you can raise revenue because it's easy for you to just go to the CBN and get those monies, especially in our case where it's above the 5% of the actual revenue. In fact, as we're even talking about this, even last month, the reps, passed, approved another 1 trillion naira, of CBN financing to the government, even with this whole 23 trillion naira. So the question is, if we raise 20 trillion naira revenue, 5% of that should be more. We raised 20 trillion naira revenue last year.
We did not.
Think sorry, I just got it. So I think these are issues that people would look at and say how independent is the central bank, especially when we talk about monetary policy and all of that. So I think I should stop here.
Got you, Wilson. Thank you so much. Let's get Patrice Becker. Did I get that right?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you well. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, I want to commend you and your guests for this very informative. So my question is very quick. In this push for for cashless society, the concern that I have for many African countries is that some people will be left behind, or they're not ready, or they're not capable of living as fast as the rest of society. So in terms of Are there concerns about the exclusion of the most vulnerable in this particular instance in Nigeria? That's my question.
Yeah, good one. Dr. You want to take that?
Yes, so I think in terms of inclusion, I think we talked about this in the early part of this session where we I spoke about the informal aspects, people who don't have access to internet, electricity and all of that. I think these are the grave concerns, and that's part of why we're seeing some of these let's say unrest and pockets of issues coming up across the different states, across the country. So yeah, I think these are the things that perhaps could have been addressed, especially when you hear police people saying things like unintended consequences. I mean, these things should have been factored in, and if they were, we wouldn't have gotten ourselves into this case where we are. So I think that's the very point.
Yeah, because just as a segue, same in the same U.S., right? California, the states tried to pass, was it California or the county tried to pass a law that said cashless. It was a law, everyone had to go cashless. And I think the House guys there passed the bill to say you cannot force folks to go cashless because they said it was deemed racist or targeted at the minorities because those guys use only cash. So if you were very, very poor, you get only cash. That was the idea. So they sort of walked back that law just to make the point Patrice is making. I think not everyone is not going to get on that train. Just like everyone is not on the credit train and even on the inclusion train, some folks are going to be not getting that train. Not because they don't want to be, but simply because Africa is not just quote unquote civilization enough to have them on that train. But I think the net benefits to the society, to the continent of the cashless and even the inclusion outweighs that. I mean, look at let's say something that concerns us all transfers. If you're moving money from revenue transfers from the US to Africa, you pay much, much more. It's the same technology to send money from Africa to Asia, from Africa to South America, it's the same tech. But somebody in Africa, you pay double to get that money in. There are no wires, it's the same internet, right? So if we were to be financially included, then we can do more of the transfers, even if you want to use crypto or you want to use the central bank currencies, or just to transfer person to person from Houston to Lagos to Mombasa. That will bring that cost down. And I think it's going to be more of I'll prefer more of the incentive to get on the train than being punished to get on the train. If I see that I can get money from my cousin in Houston, he could send me $1, which in Nigeria is almost 700 naira I could feed, then I'm going to get the phone that I can easily transfer. That's just my take. So, yeah. Patrick, you have come back to that.
No, I think what we're seeing basically that we've built in many countries by leapfrogging landlines, for example.
Correct.
We built basically a first world infrastructure on top of a developing world one, right? Where you have issues with electricity and the internet. And it's how you bridge that and how you make that work. I think that is going to be important. But I do agree with you wholeheartedly on making it an incentive rather than punishment. It's just so happens that right now many people are being punished instead of being given the incentive.
Sure. Yeah, good point. Good point. I got you. All right. Thanks so much for that. Billionaire, you got the floor. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir. Okay, I think I've lost you. Let's get Usman. Usman, please go ahead, sir. Usman, you got the floor. Usman? Usman?
Hello?
Hi. How you doing?
Hi, thank you. Great. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Great discussion so far. So basically 2 points I think I have. One would be a bit of a question and the other is really a comment. I'll start with the comment. I don't know if you guys heard some of the discussions that came out around the table, that discussions between the CBN Chief Economic Advisor to the President, Professor Louis Salami. Seems like the Islamic part had an opinion that the optimal amount of cash for Nigeria's economy should be around 2 trillion naira, and the CBN had an opinion that it should be somewhere around 700 billion, right? I'll take Professor Salami's opinion any day for 1,000 days than the CBN governors, because simply for expertise and experience and his output over the last 3 decades, if you follow. He's a known economist, very, very good. So I would take that. So that tells me that this policy had nothing to do with national interest. It had nothing to do with what's doable, what's feasible, what's ideal, moving the cashless thing forward, combating on eating all the objectives. It had nothing to do with that. It's very, very clear. And then all the major players, so from the presidency to the CBN to the governors fighting it, none of them, for me that's the takeaway, none of them have national interest, right? Because you cannot have national interest and risk national anarchy just to achieve something like cashless or just control over cash in circulation. So all the data that was put out in terms of we have too much money in circulation, all that turned out to be false, because we have examples of more advanced economies, more countries like South Korea have more cash in circulation than Nigeria, right? You can get more technology savvy human beings than South Korea, for instance, which is like Singapore and stuff. So there's a reason why globally we've not eliminated cash yet, and we can't eliminate it in Nigeria. So to be honest with you, this policy had nothing to do with economics or monetary policy. It is purely political. I have no doubt in my mind, 100%. But it also leads us to discuss, the benefit, should we do this, should we not? That's fine. So that was basically my comment. In terms of my question around central bank independence, it seems to me, right, this is a debate that is going on globally around how independent should central banks be at the end of the day. But to be honest with you, if you look at the trajectory over the last, at least since the Bretton Woods institutions came on board, last 7 or 8 decades, central bank independence has been increasing, not decreasing. Right? And the financial crisis have been increasing, not decreasing. So it doesn't seem to me like it's a straightforward answer that central bank independence actually gives rise to better financial management. Maybe, maybe not. So it is a debate. I think there are arguments both ways. But however, for me, what the fundamental issue is, the more independent the central bank is, right, the less power each CEO should have, in my opinion. So if you give the government too much independence, right, and all the power is concentrated on the governor, right, then you have issues like this. Because the governor now can do what he wants, how he wants it, based on whose royalty he has, for instance. So in Nigeria, for instance, the federal bank governor also appoints monetary policy committee members as well as the president, right? And also the deputy governors always vote with the governor. Most of the time, if you look at the MCC budget, right, there's hardly maybe sometime when there's a conflict in the deputy governor, maybe you have different vote, but most of the time, 95% of the time, they vote as a block. All the CBN members vote as a block, and then some of the CBN governor nominees, and then you have the few independent ones, the president, and then one statutory level. So for me, that's where we should, maybe the next reform should come from, right? There's so much power in government, there's so much power is both the CEO and the chairman of the board. I think that's not too much power. So that would be my what do you think? Sorry. Yeah, let's see. What do you think about this scenario of the more independence, then the less power one partner should have?
I think you made a very interesting point, and especially on the independence of central bank. There's a study that I came across, a few days ago, where it's put up together by some guys in IBIS, that's the Banking International Settlement. And what they tried to do was to look at independent central banks and how that affects inflation. And one of the key messages they found was that central banks that are more independent are likely to address or control inflation even much better than those that are not independent. So we can then talk about Nigeria, how practical would that be, especially when inflation is also driven by some of the non-monetary factors as well. But then I think the idea behind the central bank independence, and when you look at most of the criteria, Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Oh, okay. I got a notification. I was wondering. I think the idea is, there are different criteria. You can talk about institutional independence, legal independence, and so many other aspects. But I think one key area is to avoid the central bank to be like a cash cow for the government, right, for the fiscal side. We've seen even with the COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, lots of quantitative easing, central bank playing up, some fiscal roles, pushing more money into circulation, even in the EU as well. But that does not mean that we should, negate some of the laws that we have, especially those laws that set those criteria as to the limits of how much central bank can fund government activities, which I think, we've gone beyond that as well. Even in the advanced countries, like you mentioned, like the issues of independence are still very debated. Like in Canada, for instance, the Ministry of Finance and the central bank would come together to set inflation targets, right? And the Ministry of Finance can actually give orders to the CBN, to the governor of the central bank, provided that it's approved by the parliament, right? So I don't think it's an issue of whether or not. I think it's more about having that independent central bank is important to ensure that the central bank is able to carry out its role without political influence. We don't want a case where tomorrow the CBN or a group of people can come to and say central bank with interest rate is too high. Even though Trump did that with Jerome Powell, but that's not what we should be looking at in best practice. But that said, I think the final point I'll make is we also need to ensure we can hold central banks more accountable, right? So there are proposals as to how you can have an independent committee that would review the actions of the central bank, right? It's okay to be independent, but who checks, who monitors, who ensures that they also follow the law? So there has to be that sort of monitoring mechanism, which I think whether we have them or we don't have them, or we're not making use of it at all.
And Wilson and Osman, let us make the point for those following. Why should the central bank be independent? Let us lay this point out, right? Any elected official, his objective is to build roads and to help his constituents by spending. So whichever party you are, Republican, Democrat, PDP, Labour, APC, you want to spend money. You want to borrow and spend. But the implication is that you might then run into inflation. You might create so much money with so much velocity that then the money becomes depreciated. So the central bank steps in more or less like a party pooper. When the economy is growing too fast, the central bank will come in and slow it down. If the economy is growing too slow, the central bank will come in and speed it up by giving it cheaper funds. So if you have the central bank governor and the executive working together with the purpose of the executive, which is what the central bank immediately has said, then you're going to have excess spending. Because immediately will say he's there to support the executive. That's sacrilege. The central bank governor should never say that. His job is not to support the executive. His job is price stability, i.e. inflation, to make sure that there's not a lot of excess capacity or cash in the system that then drives inflation. This whole problem, like what Usman is saying, this whole problem really has to do with Emefiele is a politician. And he got into bed with politicians, he ran for the presidency. So his decision-making process and whatever he does today is being viewed politically. If he was the presidential candidate, he would not have done what he's doing. He didn't raise interest rates till it was clear he was going to not be the candidate. Then he raised NPR all the way to 50 and all. So I think Usman has a good point. If they want independence on one hand, then we have to take away the rights and privileges that the owner or the owner of that seat does have within the CBN. So good point, Usman. I'll take that in. Let's get Olumide. Olumide, hi. You've been thanked for Yeah. Olumide, you've been hanging around. What's going on, Olumide? Go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. Interesting discussion. I love the insights from listening to. But I have three questions very quick about it. The first question is that with the way monetary policies have been politicized in the past couple of months and the recent outcry by many members of the ruling party, do you see a reversal of the Naira design and what impact will it have in the short term and anytime? Looking at the fact that multi investor services have upgraded our ratings. Secondly, you spoke about the fact that yes, if you compare the cashless separation with GTP, it's quite very low, which I agree. But you've also forgotten that the informal sector plays a major role. And I was reading some of your research reports that showed pretty much that most of employed people in Nigeria, in fact 80%, are under low productivity. So it tells you practically that the cash really has done little to boost earnings and also economic activities grow. And if we go back to COVID, you saw that many on the macro level, we saw many top companies doing pretty much well because the CBN was intervened. But unlike Nigeria, where vulnerable Nigerians were not exposed because about 6.5 million people have BVNs, that means relating to bank accounts. And when you include MO by MTN, that pretty much tells you what all the population is including financial services. So, if you were the financial minister, for example, how would you discourage political interference in our monetary policy? And also, don't you think the informal sector is pretty much also why the Apex Bank and the president is also looking at that, fully aware that yes, security, money laundering, vote buying plays a major role in our political system.
You want to do that?
Well, thank you, Olumide. I think these are lots of questions. I think you know the answer to some of these questions.
Yes, he wants to answer.
Monetary policy. I will focus on my fiscal aspect and try to see how I can implement policies relating to manage government finances a lot more better. But again, in terms of the report I think maybe you could be referring to, I'm not sure which one, where you said a lot of people were employed in the low productivity sector. Yes. For that, I think the informal sector, especially when you look at cash as a percentage of GDP, it applies in both ways, right? I think, in my view, the cash in circulation that we often refer to, I think it's underestimated. Similar, I think even our GDP figures are underestimated, right? I feel like there are so many other aspects of the economy that may not necessarily been captured in our GDP figures. Even the fact that we can see informal economy is 65 or whatever percent of GDP. There are still aspects of the economy. If you then go into the national account, right? There are people who are arguing for household work, rural household. Take for instance, if you employ a house help, right, you pay the person, right, the person going schools and does all of that. The moment you pay that and that's captured immediately. If you marry, say you get married, your wife does that same role. You don't pay your wife, but she does that same role, but it's not captured in GDP. So there are people who are arguing that look, some of this household work, household chores, and so many other aspects of the economy that should be captured in GDP are not. So in my view, I think both are underestimated. Best case, worst case, if we increase or whatever, we'll still have somewhere around cash in circulation around maybe 2%, 2.5%, max 3-4%, which I think is still very small for a country like Nigeria. Then whether they will reverse the Naira design, I honestly think this will have to be whether or not the president and the CBN would want to do that. I don't think I can speak for them. But I think in terms of the implication, right, if this is allowed to continue, and especially if we don't have much cash in circulation, if more monies are not printed, given to the banks and co, I think it would, cause even more issues in the economy. Just a few days ago, I was speaking to someone, and she was saying she wants to buy something for her kid, right? And the kid only takes pap, right? So she went to where they didn't accept cash to pay these people. They didn't accept transfer and go. So she was looking for other means that So I think we cannot just allow this to continue. Either we need to increase money supply, especially for those new currencies, or we think of ways to maybe extend the deadline or reverse or something. I honestly think that it's a tight call, especially with the election. But I think maybe after the election, that's when there could be some policy changes over time. But the fact that the president has come out to make this and it makes it look like a more serious thing that will continue and will last for a couple of quarters. So that's my own personal view.
All right, thank you, Wilson. So, for the last 15 minutes, we're going to just take the last 15 minutes just to sort of round up in about by, say, let's be 9 o'clock Nigerian time. So, if you could ask us one question, go straight to the point, and just get Wilson, okay, let him go. He's in here for almost 2 hours. So, what my choose Chidility. Chidility, yeah, go for it, sir.
Yeah, good evening to everyone. It's in myself topic. My question is, do you think we can actually get any monetary policy right in Nigeria when we don't trust our leaders? We need our leaders here from the beginning. Because for instance, when Buhari came to power in 20, few months for him to leave office, they implementing these rules.
Which rules?
Trust our leaders.
So, sorry, we should clarify the rules just so he answers you. Which rules here? It's very clear. That's 2012, bro. 2012. Cashless 2012. So that's what Naira design. Gotcha.
But right now we started knowing there was a law, there was something like that even existing. So what I'm asking is, can our leaders can actually, they have the power? Because I understand when you are not doing something wrong, you will be able to do something right. Very close, they fought this law. The same people who implemented the law will, disobey the law. Power to actually get this kind of policy.
He got a question. Your audio is breaking off on and off. But I think we'll see. You got this question, right? He's basically asking. I don't know if you got this question. It was breaking off and off. Wilson? Chidi, I heard you say you were asking if about the implementation and all that. Your audio is breaking.
Yeah, I wasn't hearing for a while.
Yeah, Chidi, just one sentence.
Yeah,
ask the question one
when
sentence.
you said, can monetary policy be right? Something like that.
Yeah, I'm saying with the attitude of our leaders, do you think we can actually trust them to implement such policies? And do you think they can actually obey their own law, knowing fully well these people plot their own policies?
Okay. All right. Let's get into that, sir. Mr. Wilson, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Whether we can trust our leaders, honestly, I think that's a tough one. Because again, we've seen cases where I think I would link this back to how policies are made, in Nigeria, and I think that's part of one part of the big problems. I've said this several times that anything we cannot control or anything we don't understand, our approach is to ban or shut, right? I mean, we've seen that happen across so many areas. Even if you go back to the FX problem we're facing now, right? I remember back in the day when Naira used to be 155 and in the parallel market we had 157 and it stayed like that for a longer period. If you notice, when we had this issue started mainly when the 41 items, started before that, particularly in 2015. It was when this 41 item issue, the moment we banned those goods, we started seeing people moving to the other market. And so what it means is that when you ban something from your official market, what you've done actually is to, for lack of a better word, legalize the unofficial market, right? What you've done is to say, look, if you cannot get it here, find a way. And then people will find their way. And that's why we have these huge gap. So in my view, I think there are more pressing issues that monetary policy needs to look into, particularly when we talk about exchange rate and the implication it's having on the economy as a whole, whether on inflation, investment, and co. Just last in 2021, when you look at full year data, foreign investment into Nigeria was $6.7 billion or thereabout. That's really, really low. If you then look at FDI has been under $1.5 billion for how many years? So how many economy can grow with that kind of low FDI, especially when you're talking of a country like Nigeria, and even when you measure it as a percentage of GDP and all of that. So I don't know whether we can trust our leaders, because I think a lot more, the expectation for every leader is always high in Nigeria. But if you look at the indicators where we are, poverty, unemployment, so many of the social indicators, right? We are not where we should be as a country. So maybe this is a political answer to your question, but I just think we could have done better. We should not be where we are today. If truly our leaders take into interest the average Nigerian at heart.
Interesting. Well, that's a good answer. Let's get Mbo Tidem Jackson. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Hussein, for your this evening. So I just have one simple question, or it could be complex, because looking at the issue we have presently, the cashless policy has created lots of fracture within the system. Do you think that the e-Naira could do something, or could there be other means to actually drive this integration that could help people move around with cash or so? That's just what I have to say.
Thank you. I should put a disclaimer out here first that I'm not a doctor yet. At least I'm not done with my PhD yet. So so just to
Doctor, we've made you a Twitter doctor and a chief economic advisor, so you're covered, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. So I think Carla even mentioned this earlier. Absolutely, Naira is a good thing, right? Whether or not we will get as many people to come on board remains the issue. I think so far not so much has been, not so many people have come, have signed up to it. Even though we see the numbers and there's some progress, but not as expected. So I think the problem will be how we can get to reach some of those people in the informal space, people in the household, people who are not, don't have that much education, access to internet and go to see how we can get them on board. I think there's a room for policy, especially when we look at the USSD space. How do we ensure that these things work and work properly to get many more people on board? I think maybe I'll just say this on that. I think Carlo had spoken extensively on this earlier.
Okay, good, nice one. Let's get CSO. Go ahead, sir.
Hello?
Yeah, hi, CSO. Yeah, I was. Thanks, Doc. I was sorry about that. Let's get CSO. Thanks for that. CSO, you got the floor, sir. CSO? Okay, let's get to Mr.
Hello, good evening.
Yeah, go for it, sir.
Everyone, good evening, Kalu. And good evening, Hussein, for the wonderful job. I will say wow. My question is into two. The first one is, do CBN has the direct responsibility to regulate the service charges of POS industry? Let me just put it as industry. Because over time, I want to term the activity as Naira black market, when you have to pay exorbitantly. Even before this opera, when you have to pay and the charges is not regulated, some people will charge low, some people will charge high, depending on who the customer is, to determine what is low and what is high. And that is my first question. The second question is about the Article 17 of the CBN policy,
where the CBN expressly has the sole right to decide what is legal tender and what is not. I was watching a documentary about a particular town in Kwara State, Ijara, where their king issued voucher, and that voucher circulates, not a one-off thing, but it circulates, and it becomes a legal tender. Even the market women, they were happy collecting it. I also saw a very popular Fuji musician online yesterday with vouchers in his hand, possibly to sell it for people because stepping or spraying money at parties are not frowned at by the government. So when we now begin to have vouchers, and sometimes gift vouchers are also a silent legal tender that we are not talking about. So what is the line that is drawn in the midst of all of this? So that's my question. Thank you.
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question, Wilson. I mean, legally, if I a gift card, I was reading an article once in America where all these restaurants have got gift cards, tons of money in those gift cards. It's only legal tender in the restaurant. In the restaurant, you convert your dollars to the gift card and you can spend. So it's tied back to this question. To tie that back into the central bank legal tender, if you have a take on that, I would really love to hear your take on that.
Well, I think when you talk about legal tender, I think you're referring to, those specifically, the currency as it were. So all of these things, I don't think, because if you notice, if you look at the pound notes, right, you will see something about when you hold it, it's more like a liability for the central bank. Like they have the right to pay you that amount. So that's what you would call as a legal tender. So it's almost like a fiat money, right? So for all the other ones, I think those are areas, those vouchers and co. I don't think I would categorize them or we would categorize them as legal tender, right? But those are it's also almost like promissory notes and co. So I mean, when you talk about monetary policy and all of that, you can't. They are not really that much affected, as it were, especially when we're talking about what is authorized by the country, the national currency, as it were. Even the Naira is a fiat currency, and it was instituted by the central bank and co. So it's only the central bank that has that power. So whenever you want to create maybe a voucher or something, because it's clearly stated that if you spray money, there are different offenses when you spray money, when you step on it, and all of that. So somebody can create paper, whatever, and then just so you don't break the law. But I don't think those in itself are money, as it were, that comes from the central bank. That's if I get your question right. But in terms of the POS charges, right?
Yeah.
My thought would be that the central bank is the apex financial regulator, and I think it has the right to regulate and to address some of these issues. If you remember, some of these ATM charges, the CBN can come up and make policies to that regard as well. As long as those charges are not, caused by maybe some policy errors or policy actions of the bank, maybe people to get access to these services or to these ATMs, and then there are charges that come from the CBN, and then they transfer that to the people. So I think the CBN should have the power to be able to regulate some of those activities. I don't know for that if maybe Carlo has a different opinion, especially with regards to the POS.
I think the POS guys are a private concern. They are making money because there's a need, but I think they are quote unquote, and I'm carefully with my words here. I would say they are ripping people off because there's a need, so they overcharge for that cash. And the only way I think can regulate those guys is if you allow competition. I think it's allow competition. There are lots of folks that receive cash, churches, fuel stations. I think there's something there that you can go into those places and get cash if you want to. But to say a guy just makes his money from giving you cash and is going to charge you 20% just for giving you cash, that's sort of, to me, that's excessive profit making. Just because they are not billionaires doesn't mean they can charge 20% just to exchange currency for you. That seems very excessive to me. And they're doing it because there's a need. So I would say the fintech guys out there have an opportunity. There's tap and pay opportunity out there. There are lots of things we can do now that we can, should we say, allow folks to pay without accessing cash. And that would, I think POS in the long run is going to just peter out. If everyone can use a card or a phone or a watch to make a payment for the incidentals, and then write your checks for the big issues, then why would you? I know I asked the question of yourself, what do you need 100,000 naira in cash for every week if your check bills are done? What do you need the 100,000 naira in cash for? So I think competition should take care of it. I really don't want the CBN to go to them. They are private guys. Let them make their money. But it is competition that will take them out. Yeah, 20% is too much. Per transaction. Yeah, that's what I think. Okay, let's get Haruna. Who's spoken about in a few minutes? Just guys on deck. Just let them speak and then we'll let you go. Haruna, you got the floor, sir.
No, it's okay. I'm not pressed for time this evening, so
all right, super.
We can extend.
Super. Yeah. Sure. Haruna, you got the floor.
Should I ask a question or make a comment?
Go any of the above, sir.
Well, thank you for the space. You're doing a great job for us. Well, about this economy, the CBN and the currency, your topic is a loaded topic for today. It's really a loaded topic that 2 hours cannot do justice to the topic. But anyway, about this economy, we know where it is and we know where it's headed. We got just help out that. There's a second thing about this currency, about this CBN currency cash limitation. Let me just ask a question. Do you feel that it's going to be effective? Do you feel that it's going to help the economy? Do you feel it's going to be a progressive policy designed by the CBN? When we don't have the infrastructure to implement this? What is your
Yeah, if you honestly speaking, between I and Wilson and the crowd, there are two policies going on here. There's cashless policy and the Naira change policy. I personally believe the Naira change policy is more targeted at non-monetary outcomes, which means it's not there to fight inflation, nor is it there to fight inclusion. It has a specific target, and that specific target is February. So I believe that by March, there will be cash all over the place. That's what I personally believe. It's targeted from February, and after February, this will go away. It's not the monetary thing. The cashless policy is the one that is going to succeed, that's going to be here since 2012, that has been here and will go away. But the Naira change one is the one that I think is only targeted at February. And it's not has nothing to do with monetary outcomes, if I can answer that way. Do you have a comeback to that, sir?
May God bless you. Thank you very much. You've answered me well.
Haruna, where are you calling from?
I'm in my village, Ningi Boshes, Ningi local government.
How is it over there? Do you still have the old currency? How are you guys paying for goods and services in Ningi?
Wallahi, my brother, I can tell you, people are suffering. People are suffering. You don't see the Naira, the new Naira news. If you know what is going on, you see, like, I'm a farmer. I went to the market today. We have a market day. My brother, you see a farmer from a remote village, let's say from Sosai or down in Bura. There's no network there, no electricity to start with. They bring their produce now. They want cash, but you see people are buying a bag of maize for 7,000 naira. 7,000.
Sorry, forgive my ignorance. Is that a lot or is that not a lot? We put context to 7,000 naira. Is that a lot or not a lot?
Not a lot.
Okay.
Because it's been cheated.
Okay, because there's no cash.
The price is about 20,000 naira.
Oh, gosh.
20,000 naira.
Wow.
But it's even for 7,000. And these people that are buying for 7,000 are not people based within, they come, they travel from the cities or wherever to come and buy. Yeah. Like the value chain. Yeah. Agriculture. Yeah. So you see that the farmer is you see people crying. People are crying, selling, but they are crying. They are collecting the money, but they are crying. Because they need the cash. The money crying. The money inside is crying.
Question for you, Haruna. What is the feeling that are those farmers going to tomorrow get accounts, like maybe like online accounts, or are just going to hope that they can accept the new cash? Has it changed their minds of how they do their banking or cash collection? Those farmers that don't have the online today.
You see, the farmers are just cussing and swearing because one, where they are located, they don't even have electricity or food. They need to travel like 70, 80 kilometers to get to where communication is. These are talking of farmers that they don't even have the national identity card. They only have voters card to start with fast. They don't know VV anywhere. When I was discussing with one, I was telling him, you need to open an account, let him come to the local government, get one, come to any bank there, open an account. He said, what does he need an account for? I said, no, because this is what the government is like, that's why you are getting to know this policy. I was trying to explain to him because he's a farmer like me and I have a farm close to the village too. So I was trying to enlighten him. But he kept on saying that he doesn't need a bank. He kept on saying he doesn't need a bank. And these are people that they are just using farm, say 5,000, 1 acre plot. What do you farm? They just keep it, they harvest, they sell some. Then when they have problem, they move 1 or 2 bags to the market, sell, they move some shopping. When their daughters are going to get married, when they have a name ceremony, when somebody, that is all they use their money for. So it's a demand-based money utilization, produce. It's not commercial farmers that are big-time farmers. Like you farm a lot of hectares that you can just, if you don't sell that with this crisis, you don't have money, you can transport to a big-time like Golan farm or something. But these are people, they don't even know what the time of Golan farm, they don't know what even the value chain is all about in the agricultural sector. So, but they don't understand. I mean, they just want to live their life primitive way they are used to. That is the problem. And even now you have access to communication, electricity, and these people, they only know they listen to the CBN Hausa because all our radio stations, women are not into those villages. You know what I'm trying to say? The women of all our radios, they only listen to BBC Hausa, RFI. So
do you think if the CBN went to that BBC house and explained, do you think that they would be more they would embrace the inclusion side of this whole equation? Do you think it's an issue of that they don't know and the government could go talk to them, or they just don't want to do it at all?
You see, there's a mystery now. What have the government done to me, and what is the government asking me for? What have the government? I'm talking about this right. They don't even have schools, primary school. They don't have water supply, they don't have electricity. If you see the roads to those villages, you weep, my brother. When it's really rain time, you are out of public.
What's it again? Bauchi has got some of the highest FAC allocations in Nigeria, if I'm not hearing myself right. One of the highest. FAC, Federal Accounts. Yeah, one of the highest.
No. It has a very good allocation, but not the highest. Because one lesson, you see, we have very good, we have local governments. Then the FAC allocation comprises local governments, the states, then you have the vice chair, and so on and so forth. Am I right?
Correct.
So then the number of your local governments and the population size determines your allocation. Am I right?
Correct.
Density. We are in the density populated state quite weak. But you can't compare us to like what have we my brother, to be very honest with you, to be very, very honest, we have to devise economic policy in tandem with our cultural, socio-cultural affiliation, not the Western indoctrinated policies. We have to determine our policy that will work with our own socio-cultural political climate. Not that every time you see the West, Mr. Kanu, it's a cashless driven economy, it's a debt driven economy. Do you agree with me?
Correct, yes, I do.
But ours is not a debt driven economy. You have to pay cash to get services. Without that cash, you don't get that services. And you see, and then coming to the fintech industry, a lot of people will get alerts. You've been hearing cases of people sending fake alerts and so on. So we have not even developed or protected that our fintech industry to a certain level that you have to convince me that this services is okay. You are sitting down in your house now, you'll be seeing your accounts being debited. People are back and they're debiting you. You go to the bank, you have how many cases now? You see people, man, that is not even catching that their accounts are being debited. Papa, you'll be having account on that of this thing. So you see, we have not protected that our policy until we want a policy round that will incorporate all these things and make it seamless. You can start with a test pilot. What is the rate of internet penetration in the country? Don't think about the number of lines that they are
I got you.
I'm sure you have 3 or 4 lines. You have Etisalat, you have this, you have that. You understand what I mean?
I got you.
Why do you need all those lines?
I mean, I got you.
MTN, you are moving, then it goes up. You switch to Nine Mobile or you switch to Airtel. Am I right?
I got you. Hannah, I think I've gotten the sense of really what I don't know if Wilson has. I want to get your take because I've spoken to you before and I know your demographics. I'm asking these questions for those that do not know you and just to give them a sense of where you are coming from. Wilson, I don't know if you had any questions or any comments on his particular situation.
Yeah, I think this is just the reality, right? These are the realities of what Nigerians are facing, right? Not those in commercial capitals or cities that are quite developed than others, right? So I think from what he said is that so probably we could see a drop in inflation numbers, particularly for January when this was largely implemented, right? But for January, February, yeah. But I think the another key point he's also making is that you could, in general, see a case where output for the first quarter will be affected. Especially when you put all of this together across different sectors and different economic players, right? So I think using this monetary tool to address the problem of inflation that is, CBN is pointing to, is a wrong approach, right? The ripple effect and the so-called unintended outcomes will be much more larger than what they're saying. So, in my view, making policies, you should have considered all of this. Somebody mentioned the data, right? Look at the data of financial inclusion across states, and I mentioned earlier data of internet access, access to electricity and all of those things, right? Why can't we consider all of those things when making policies? I declared something, finally, I'll just make this point. I declared something about the number of bank branches sometime in October across all the countries, all the states, rather. And one of the things that came out, a lot of people were saying, oh, commercial bank branches, is it really relevant in Nigeria? The fintech players are taking over. In some states, you have in Taraba, where you have the least number of bank branches in 2021, you have 28 bank branches, commercial bank branches in Taraba State. In Bauchi, that he mentioned, you have 40 commercial bank branches. And you can imagine where all of these branches will be skewed towards the capital. How about people who are in remote areas? How can you reach them? No access to internet and co. How do you reach them in terms of agents, operators, and co? So it's sad that we have some of these data, but we don't factor them into when policies are being made, and policies that will ultimately hurt people. So I honestly can feel the pain of what he's saying.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is saying is that you said he's saying that they are buying the maize for 7,000, but the guys are not going to sell the maize for 10 or 8. They're going to sell them at the real market price. So inflation won't come down, just as the super profits will be made by the purchasers in bulk. So we're not going to see that drop in price. They are mopping it up at the low cost to resell at the market price. That's what I think is going to happen, number one.
When I say inflation, I'm referring to inflation rates.
Okay.
Right. So not that the prices would be down, right, in general on average, but I'm saying inflation rates could come down. Like we mentioned earlier, maybe somewhere to around 20%, 20.7%.
Yeah.
Which is the pace at which prices will grow is what will slow. Not necessarily that prices would fall and we will start having paying less for that.
And a second question: where are the fintechs? We've heard this fintech story in Nigeria. They've raised FDI. They are the number one in Africa. Where are the fintechs, especially in the north of Nigeria? This was their World Series. From December to January was their World Series. This was when fintech would have come to show the commercial bank that you guys do not know what you are doing. We are going to come and process transactions for the Okada and the pepper sellers, and we will shame the banks. But what happened? In time of crisis, Nigerians ran to the ATM and not to the phone. It's a problem that the fintech guys to me are wearing t-shirts and we're only getting the inclusion numbers, right? The banks have already failed in inclusion. Less than 3% of Nigerians have accessed a bank loan since 1960. Less 34%, or let's say less than 40% formally included. Nigerians only use banks to receive deposits from salary and spend via taking cash out of ATMs. There's no real bank economy in Nigeria. And then this thing has happened and it has exposed us all as just paper giants. Paper giant that currency cannot be swapped. There is no currency. People are doing trade by barter. Look at what am I saying? People are doing trade by barter. Where are the fintechs absent? Where are the banks absent? So who will do this? POS agents, not the banking sector. POS agents are not the banking sector. People are going to these guys. Where are those guys getting their cash from? That the banks and the other guys can get their cash from. A lot of questions, though. It's a lot of questions. But there's been a failure institutionally, right? That we were stress tested and then everyone failed. From the regulator to the operators, everybody failed. Where is that consumer protection agency? Where are they? They are my good friends. Where are they here? Loan shark people are running away. What are they doing now to go after companies that are saying you must pay us to receive a transfer or we will not receive a transfer? Why won't you receive a transfer? If you have a company in Nigeria, why will you not receive a transfer? Where is NCC? You have a license, you have a phone, you have a POS, and you insist on cash. Why should your license not be revoked? So many people are sleeping. They are waiting. Even the governors, at least they are fighting for their own pockets. Why are the regulators not fighting for their own pockets? It's a mess. It's a complete mess. Yeah, if you ask me so. Let me get. Go ahead. Yeah.
Before you go forward, there's hello.
Go ahead, sir. You got the floor. Go ahead, Chid. Wilson. Yeah. Wilson, go ahead. Wilson, did I lose you?
Okay, I can hear you now. Oh, I got a distraction. I can hear you now. Before you even go forward, I also co-authored a report for Faith Foundation, right? Which it was on the state of entrepreneurship in Nigeria. It was released late last year. One of the things that when we went to the field to do the surveys is how people rely. It's almost like people rely on their local systems, right? The cooperatives. When we try to get access to finance and how many businesses, entrepreneurs are getting, where you're getting money from in terms of loans, you'd realize that the cooperative societies play even more important roles than the banks and some of these fintechs and co, especially in these rural communities that are, not in state capitals and all of that. So even before now, the narrative has always been that, look, people are self-organizing. People are trying to come up with things to help themselves. So you can then imagine with a policy like this, how many people would want to trust the banks, to put their money out. And mind you, I'm not talking about people who live in Lagos and Abuja and some of these main cities. I'm talking about people who reside in these rural areas, and we know that almost half of our population reside in these areas. So I think these are issues that, for me, we don't have to create problems for ourselves. I could understand what maybe the non-political aspect of it, but as far as the economic aspect and the social implications of this, I don't think we should have gone this far. And how we approach it is totally, in my view, I don't think this is the best we could have. We can even do better in terms of how we approach this policy.
Chini, do you have a second opinion? Chini, B. Chini, do you have a second opinion or you agree with us?
Yeah, hello. So I agree with what he's saying, but I think that the main problem we have as a country is implementing policies. So while Haruna was speaking, the one thing that came to my mind was the movie Bank of Dave. I don't know how many of you have seen it on Netflix. It's about Burnley and how a man single-handedly started a bank because he needed to assist or support the locals that were producing financially. And as a result, the economic impact of I think it was 2008 or so, did not affect Burnley at that time because it was a locally operated bank. Like, it was just between the bank owner and the locals and their produce and their businesses. So when he was speaking, it made a lot of sense. Everything he said made sense. So back to what CBN is doing. I think one of the problems with our policymakers, I'm sorry if you're one of the policymakers, please forgive me, is our implementation strategy is whack. We make the best policies, we make the best strategies. Our implementation does not consider what the people want or what they feel. There are a lot of barriers that arise, and those barriers come from the people. I did a research recently, and I realized that for every policy that the government makes, they look past the people who are supposed to feed from these policies. For example, what is going on right now? What happened to rolling out like a survey, or sensitizing people within the rural areas, explaining to them what is going to happen within the next 3 months? What did happen to before 3 months ago? Like before the date this whole Naira change and everything started? Why is the policy happening now? Why the hurry? Why didn't they take time to talk to people, explain to them this is what we're going to do? Even during the process, they would have maybe done the pilot stage kind of arrangement, or maybe.
Chini, I don't think I think you know that. I think the issue was that this was to be a surprise move. So
When I saw we did not expect, we did not anticipate. Like, who says that to people?
Okay, but yeah, there was a failure of the implementation, and I also think many folks just didn't believe that this would happen. This was given in October, right? So I don't know.
So the thing, as Nigerians, you remember when this whole thing started? People did not want to collect the money because they felt it was fake money. You remember?
Yes.
So why would people? The moment you saw that people were not collecting this note because they felt it was fake, what was the next line of action? Go in and tell them what it is. Let them know this is where we're headed. But they just kept doing their thing like everybody should know. And suddenly set a deadline that was so realistic. So the problem is people are the barriers for every form of implementation, whether monetary or non-monetary policies. And you need to make sure that when they push back, there is something to mitigate. There is something you have to do. It's just worrisome that this will continue to happen, even if we talk about it today and tomorrow. The next policies that are going to be implemented will experience the same setback, the same challenges. It's just the way we've been.
Chini, it's not a portion in Jesus' name. That's our response to that. It's not our place. It's not our portion. So
I feel someone failed us
I don't think it's, I don't want to blame CBN. I think it was a systematic failure across the board. When this policy came out, go to my tweet. I told people the real policy will come after this one. The real policy will come. I wrote it there. The real policy will come after this announcement, and it's come. And we've been caught flat-footed. So paper banks, paper tie wearing, t-shirt wearing. In the end, it's all paper. I can go ahead, sir.
I sort of want to move the conversation to the real effects on labor and unemployment.
Okay.
So currently we have, so based on the title of the space, currently we have unemployment of 33%. NESG is forecasting that by the end of this year we're looking at 37% unemployment rate. Now, what are the long-run hysteresis or scarring effects of unemployment? Because nobody seems to be talking about this. You hear everyone saying unemployment is just going to come down. But if we look at the situation or look at the example of Mexico, when in the 1980s they had the tequila crisis, then you had the whole massive unemployment, banks, companies going bankrupt, mass unemployment, and then the hysteresis or what's in layman terms the scarring effects of the unemployment probably led to the mass, the infestation of the country by drug lords and crime and all of that. Nobody in Nigeria seems to be talking about it. Almost no economist, almost no policymaker, almost no politician. We just think that having high unemployment simply just means that once it comes down, social issues would automatically come down when there is a lot of economic research.
Gotcha.
So I think that they're scarring from unemployment. This time, Wilson, if it's opportune, discuss this with Nigerians that long-run unemployment actually does have long-run effects on young people and on society.
Sure. Yeah, listen, go. I mean, unemployment is just key for Nigeria. I think I call this election an economic election. We are voting based on the economics this time. Well, so, and youths are unemployed and poor. So it's a great question I can ask.
Hello.
Yeah, you got the floor, sir.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. Interestingly, this is also the area where my PhD is focusing on. So this is one area where I've been working on in the last over a decade now, looking at unemployment. And one of the arguments I have put forward, even just looking beyond the definition of unemployment, is also look at the drivers and then see areas where policies can intervene and how we can grow the economy and create productive jobs, because you can create jobs like what we saw in the early 2000s, where the services sector and aspect of the services sector created massive those job creation. Some would say that decade is a decade of jobless growth. I don't think that we had jobs created but not much impact on income, right? So it's almost like jobs was moving from agriculture to trade and non-tradable services, trade, and some of the sectors with lower productivity levels. So 80%, according to what I've found so far, 80% of people who are employed in Nigeria work in sectors with the least levels of productivity, right? So I think this is another discussion that we could spend hours talking about. This is even people who are working, right? So you're working in jobs where you're unemployed, you're not well paid. You work mainly in the informal space. And informality may not totally be bad, but it has some inherent already states that, in terms of growing output over time, scaling up, becoming large firms. So those are key problems. So I'm even talking about those who are employed, right? And now if you then go to unemployment, I think it's even much worse, especially when you look at the numbers and the projections for Nigeria. So some of the implications I think are very clear to us. We see no-go areas. There are areas where you can't go to at night, because of issues of unemployment. It affects productivity, leads to crime, social disorder. Some of these arguments that we see, I think some of the candidates have put forward that some of the issues we're facing now, some of the social problems relating to terrorism, and most of it came from the economic side of it, which you would argue unemployment and poverty are key part of it. So we're already saying it. I don't think maybe people are not debating it enough to provide the linkage between poor economic performance and some of these activities that we're seeing. But we're seeing them already happening in different areas, different aspects of the country. But yeah, I get the point that maybe we need to strengthen that linkage. But again, even when we do, what will policymakers do, right? Will they consider this and make policies and make better policies to reduce unemployment? I think that's one of the biggest areas, right? We have plans, we have now a national agenda up to 2050, but implementation, right? Maybe we need to put up another space entirely to see how maybe we can break that down and see how we can get better implementation of some of these policies.
I agree. Yeah, we were having a good economic conversation towards the elections, well before the elections. We're having a good conversation. Who's going to create jobs? Who's going to do employment, education? This cash thing just sucked the air out of every debate. Now it's all about wait, yeah, this is just, it sucked the debate. But let me go back, sir, Wilson, to this issue about folks collecting cash and charging 20%. Someone sent me a DM. He says she took an Uber and the Uber, she paid the guy, the Uber guy accepted the transfer, then asked her to please help him include some money into her fare because at the end of the day, he's going to withdraw cash and transfer or pay to the actual quote unquote the Uber, I think quote unquote the delivery company that he works for. I think there should be a deliberate effort to go to shops, institutions that are mandating cash only payments and sanction one or two. And when I mean sanction, revoke the license, fine them 1 billion naira. It's wickedness. There's nothing financial about it, what I'm saying. Someone has paid you a transfer, or you can receive monies via transfer. Why are you insisting on cash when you see people are suffering to get cash? Why are you insisting on cash? We're not talking about the small woman selling pepper. We're talking about corporates. Why is a corporate insisting on receiving cash payments for goods or services? It's wrong. The Consumer Protection Agency, the NCC, the CBN, the police form a task force. Target, just do a poll on Twitter. You get the names of the companies accepted. I don't name them. Demanding or mandating cash only. Go after them. Make an example. That's how you do this. Why are you not collecting transfers? Why are you not at market women? Why is your shop? Explain to me. You are in Lagos. You've got internet. You've got a cash transfer. Why are you collecting only cash? Make an example out of people. This is wickedness. It has to stop. On that, let's get Okonko to speak. Okonko, thanks for waiting. You've been coming in and out. Okonko Ntia, you got the floor, sir. Go ahead. Going once, going twice. Mr. Abubakar, how are you, sir? Abubakar? Is it me? Abubakar, you got the floor, go ahead. Oh, man. Okay, let's see. Useful, you've got the floor. Usefully, Francis Oken 15. Mr. Oscar, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, okay.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Okay, I've been following the discussion. So, I was in China, 2014, 20, 2014. I was in China, so I was having a business done at the time. And I was watching the business environment in China. They are using WeChat, just like what we have in WhatsApp. They have WeChat, they have Alipay, and 90, almost 92 to 97% of the Chinese citizens are cashless. I've been there 2 times now. I was in Kenya again. I saw M-Pesa, local transaction being used on phone. Also, I don't have the numbers right now, the percentage Kenyans that are cashless in terms of transaction for an everyday buying. These countries, China, for example, have 8 billion plus, up to 2 billion people in their ecosystem, and they've been able to get these transactions seamlessly across both the town environment and the village environment. And I was close enough to go to the level of buying tea from those sites. Then I ended up, the cash that I was having, the dollar that I was having, I couldn't use it. Nobody's using cash. Because I just had to align with friends that had to use the phone to make transactions for me. So my challenge comes back to the discussion we were having when we were challenging defenders. And I have a problem with the situation in Nigeria because I'm trying to figure this out. One area that I know that was happening in Nigeria was OPay. OPay came into Nigerian markets, and OPay was bought over by a Chinese company. I don't want to go into details now, but I know they pumped in, something less than $50 million then. They wanted to expand. That's, if you remember, when they had this Okada business in Lagos, when you have the other competitions that were going on in Lagos before the Lagos State government banned use of bikes. However, there was something very peculiar Opel was doing there. I don't know if people were paying attention. Opel had an app there, which is still running on. I have the app. And how do they penetrate the market so that they can go to the lowest level of the retailers that can be able to adopt this ecosystem and e-transactions? And he went down to the Okada so that if you have been in Lagos then, if you use a bike that's normally the distance they cover, the 100 naira, for example, Opay will say you should pay 50 naira, and they will bear the cost of 50. The bike will still have the money of 100, but they will bear the cost. The essence is the only way you can pay that 50 is you pay through the app. And what are they trying to do? They are trying to bring the maximum number or the number that can tip the system so that people can adopt using the app for transaction. So if they build their app strong enough, I know from what I saw, from how they are doing, they are trying to target how WeChat and Alipay won the market in China. But where they were coming from the bike, then Lagos struck, and that ended that penetration. However, they still have a penetration because the major issue I think they're having now is people do transaction online, do transfers online, but the good fraction of those transactions stalls. 3 days now, I'm trying to do a transaction on GT Bank. Their system is down. Now, those OPay, we are trying to use their ecosystem, which WeChat is using. If WeChat are trying to transact on WeChat, I just use the QR code, follow the phone, I can buy Akara for 20 naira, and you know it. I can actually buy Akara for 20 naira, 20 kobo. That is how beautiful QR
code, phone to phone. We do our transaction within 2 seconds, minimum of 3 seconds. We done. There is nothing like.
Yeah, so I guess, I guess so.
My question now is it the problem coming from CBN as a policy that they don't want to allow companies like MTN just like have Vodafone that is running it in Kenya or Momo that is running it in Ghana? It is that they don't, because there's a lack of policy making that will give the power to these phone companies so that this ecosystem can be large enough that people can actually transact without all these chaos that we are having in Nigeria. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote an article, I think I put it up on Twitter, where I actually accused the central bank of playing favorites. Mobile banking in Nigeria, to my mind, has failed because the central bank is trying to make it a banking app. I think mobile banking should be given to the NCC. Let the telcos compete directly with the bank. That's my view. Like before we had transfers, how did you send money to your village? You buy recharge card, MTN or whatever recharge card, you scratch, you send the number across to your village guy will get it there and you spend. That's cashless banking. That's cashless banking. You buy a token, you send that token is acceptable in the village and across Nigeria as quote unquote tender to be used to settle a transaction. I felt like that done that way, the banks would have sat up. But the banks, just like in Kenya, M-Pesa succeeded because it was Safaricom. It wasn't a bank when it first started. And after they saw the effect of that, if you notice, no other country has allowed a telco do banking again, if you notice. So I think that if you do competition with banks, you get more mileage. More in 5 years' time, all those guys that are doing telcos that don't get sufficient market share, in my view, you can beat the bank. So that's where I'm coming from. Now, for cashless banking, I think we're in a better position where we have the banks, we have the PSBs, we also have the telcos that are now going to offer that service. So other kinds like carbons of this world out there, the photo waves that are out there. So the ecosystem is wider. I'm not sure how deep it is, but it's wider to allow more players to come in. But just like Karen has reminded us, it seems like we're all in Lagos, we're all in Port Harcourt, we're all in Abuja. We need to see more guys go to Taraba and do this fintech there. You say they don't have GS, you can buy an antenna, you can buy a satellite enabled booster for the GSM network. You can use solar and charge. So if you imagine if you become a POS agent in that village area I was talking about, I mean, look at the opportunity there for you. What do you need? You need a solar to charge the guy's phone. You need a satellite connection to connect the guy to a cell tower. It's not expensive, bro. It's not less than $1 million. You can get this two things I'm talking about. Then the guy doesn't need to have cash. And that guy's job is now to be the quote unquote bank of day in that community. So what happens? All the farmers are going to bank with that guy. All the farmers will bank with that young man. So if you have a guy that's unemployed, two people, set up a bank in quotes in that village, in your village, get them satellite receiver, it will boost the signal. You get GSM satellite signal to the place you're in, you get a solar charger, put a laptop or whatever, so they can log in and then they can do e-Naira and get banking services in that remote area. Give them $1 million cash and they become a bank. They can receive and make payments. The margins are going to be massive. You have no competition. You are creating jobs. You are creating economic output in your own village. This thing will not cost highest 5 million, 3 million. It won't cost it. And how much? $1 million in dollars is less than $10,000. You can set up a guy in the village, maybe your mother or your father or your uncle in the village, do this. So let's make this things a bit local. That's what I think should happen. I don't think we should have the bank. CBN should be the one directing banking. Banking is not done in banks alone. That's my take. Mr. Wilson, do you have an opinion or what's your take on that?
No, I know that there was a time in 2021 where the central bank gave, I think it was an approval in principle to some of the telcos for them to provide payment service activities, and I think whether it's a payment service bank license or something like that. But I'm not quite sure how much progress has been made. I think issues relating to infrastructure, power supply, access to electricity, and all of those issues. I think these are macro issues that needs to go along with whatever reforms or whoever we can incentivize, whether it's OPay or whatever company we need to support. But then they can't provide the infrastructure themselves. So all of these I see it as linking back to the actual role of government in being able to provide some of those social and economic services for citizens, particularly for those who are outside the main cities, those who reside in rural areas.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So we're still about 15 minutes left. Let's try to get some folks in here. Henry, you got the floor. Go ahead, sir. Henry?
Yeah, good evening.
How are you doing?
Good evening. Fine, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Carlo, for the space. And thank you for every other person that have spoken today. I really have been listening. I've really, learned a lot. So what I just want to say is it's high time we Nigerians should embrace the digital economy. Like we need to have our own banks, our own pockets. Because looking at the things that is going on now, I don't think everyone is happy about that. So we need to embrace a decentralized economy. Like you can manage your own money. We have cryptocurrency wallets and others. You can make use of them. You have your own bank to be in your pockets on your smartphone than facing all this. Thank you. That's what I want to say.
Yeah, interesting comment. Have your own bank, your wallet, do your crypto. Many folks are looking at that. Mr. Okonko, go ahead, sir. Hello? Okay, it's off again. Tola Joss, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening, Mr. Yeah. So, I would like to express an observation. Inflation is something that will always be with us in as much as we still have a place called the market. Inflation is not something we wake up to and one day it is gone. No, it is part of the market ecosystem. Now, it can only get major if we look at history of the price of goods and commodities and we try to look at what they are right now. It can only get major. It is not crazy that today we are buying a smartphone for more than 1 million naira. And that's 1 million naira was enough to build a bungalow some years ago. So a time is coming, we are going to use 5M to buy a smartphone. It will take too long. And this is because inflation can only bite deeper and deeper. So if you don't want to embrace digital economy, I am saying welcome to the hard life. This one will be saying that you are being wake up to the realities of inflation. It can only get major. Now, CBN announced that we are going to go cashless, even though it was a painful announcement and the way they are trying to enforce it, very minimal time and all that. But for someone like me, I made a process on people. I said I was not even affected, neither did I think that so people.
So you can get back to the question, Mr. Joss. What's the question?
I'm not asking a question.
Okay, so you can round off because we need to round off really quick, yeah?
Okay. So, in summary, I'm saying that inflation is something that we have to go through and we have to embrace. And there is no way we can leverage. There is no perfect market condition. Neither is there a bad market condition. There is no good market condition. There is no bad market condition. Inflation could be a bad, you could term it as bad, but if you are looking at the other side, it is actually good. So you want to embrace inflation, you want to see how you can use Web3, the blockchain to leverage on this And of course, fine, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. We've got about 5 minutes or so.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to say something there. I mean, we should embrace inflation. I really don't get the comments. You're saying we're buying a smartphone for 1 million naira. Why are we paying 1 million naira for a smartphone? Because exchange rate is crazy, right? So, I don't know when you say we should embrace inflation or something, right? Inflation is here to stay. That inflation you're talking about is pushing millions of Nigerians into poverty. It is not just numbers, right? The World Bank came out, the 7 million Nigerians fell into poverty because of low purchasing power. So I don't, when you say we should embrace inflation, yes, but I don't think it's something good for an economy like ours, especially when you look at the implication it's having on income, unemployment, and many of those other indicators. If so I think when your currency depreciates, right, imports become a lot more expensive, and we're dealing with some of those things now. I'm not saying we should import everything or whether what we import is even justified, but the point is also that some of the problems we're also dealing with, as a result of some of the problems we've created them for ourselves in my view.
Yeah, I think if I can, I think he's saying that it's an inevitable thing that's going to happen. So that we should. That's what I he told. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm coming to that. It's very simple. Inflation is part of the market ecosystem. So this thing we should embrace is that it is so saying that we should wake up to the reality of inflation. Okay, now, why do you think many people want the exchange rate to keep rising? It could affect the locals that, we can't do market safely because of the exchange rate. Why do you think we need to change forex traders, speculators are happy? It's because they can embrace, the good part that this inflation has to offer. Just like COVID. Many don't want COVID to go because they are benefiting from it. I said earlier that there is no good market condition, whether there is a bad market condition. It depends on how you look at it. Inflation will continue to bite that. Naira will still continue to have naira to dollar. It will. So, what are we doing now? How are we positioning ourselves before that time comes? It's what I'm trying to say, that we should embrace these realities. It's not something that we are going to, like, okay, how do we do inflation? It is part of the ecosystem in any marketplace. Even this dollar we're talking about, the buy power of dollar has been tied as well. Because that we focus on naira to dollar exchange, but dollar itself, the buy power is also diminishing. All currencies in the world, their buy power diminish. Why? Because they keep printing more and more infinite. So we have excess of fear in the system or in the market. The buy power reduces.
Okay.
So the inflation will be part of the market. Thank you.
All right, super. So we're going to take the last caller and then we'll just call it a day if you don't mind. I don't know, are you a day? Or we can see. Yeah. So are you a day? You've got the floor. Are you a day? You've got the floor there. I see I'm speaking. All right, cool. Let's call. Let's call them. Olumide, do you have any closing thoughts before we get Wilson to just? Do you have any closing thoughts, Olumide?
Not at all. I just want to comment his insightful insight and well done, Kalu. But my conclusion is just like I think, having said all this, I think we should look at the positivity of this cashless policy and the fact that Naira design, well, the implementation looks painful. We understand the objective of the president. But my final thought is that as we enter the election week, what do you think Nigerians should do? What advice do you have for Nigerians? I'm directing the question to the guest speaker for them to be calm and resilient and meet the problems facing the economy.
That's a good one.
Well, thank you, Olumide. I think we should, as you said, focus on the positives, particularly the cashless impact of it. I think that's a good approach. And perhaps, but also bear in mind that some of the pains, will continue. And even if the CBN decides to push in more cash. We shared earlier that we have close to 3 billion pieces of these notes, as at 2021 printed over the years. So you can't expect that, we will be able to mop these up in just 3 to 4 months. Yeah, so I also get your part that focus on the positive. But in terms of the election, my thought would be that, look, I think whatever is happening now should, in a way, influence the decisions that Nigerians will make at the polls. And I think that just clear if you are unhappy, I think that should reflect who you vote for. If you're happy, that should reflect who you vote for. Because, like I always say, we can't afford to make the mistakes, that we've always made. We need to, put in people that understand the economy, people that, have very clear plans, people that, have been outspoken, talking about their policies and actions, trying to leave away issues of tribalism and all of that. And I think that's what, we at the NESG would always preach that we need to look at how we can get competent people to rule the country, and it's always left to the citizens to make their choices. Yeah, so maybe as a final thought, I think this year, 2023, I don't think we are going to enjoy that much growth as anticipated by some of the outlooks that we've seen. Things will be quite tough. Maybe we can talk about production, GDP, and all of those, the sectors, dynamics, and how all of these will influence consumer spending and all of that. But on the general space, I think things will be quite tough, especially with the elections uncertainty. But again, I'm also hopeful that whoever becomes president, we will keep the ground running immediately, because we can't afford to make those mistakes that we made in 2015, where it took us almost 6 months to get the cabinet in place. I mean, you can see all the problems we have now. We don't have that luxury of time to wait for 6 months with all of the pressures coming from different parts. So I think whoever becomes president needs to get on board, put up a cabinet of superstars, ministers that have demonstrated competence in different areas, capacity to lead and all of that. I think, and hopefully, I just hope that Nigeria will be better again. I think I should just end with that positive note.
Yeah, that's a good one. Let me give my own take to Olumide. Let me put it this way. When Buhari came, Buhari was change. When he won the election in 2015, the Nigerian stock market went up. The Nigerians expected change and growth. Even power supply, the guys who were saying body language created power, they were right. Even power supply went up, because even the NEPA guys were afraid that this man is going to come and sack all of us. Everybody was just watching. Everybody sort of behaved. Nobody was making noise, because Buhari had come and was going to clean house. There was this expectation that the stock market, the professionals in the room, put money into the Nigerian economy. Nigerian bond yields fell because we were expecting something powerful to happen. It failed, right? When Buhari got re-election in 2019, the stock market went down, because reality had set in and people had understood that, listen, Buhari was no different from any other person. Now, what this means is that the market reacts to change, not really the party itself, but to change. When people are tired, there's a change. Look at the when Obama got elected, even when Clinton got elected, even Trump got elected. I know, right? Market reacts to change. I believe the PDP and the APC are the old guard. If any of those two guys win, it's the same. They are simply going to do things better. I don't expect a new PDP or APC government to simply come and say, we are going to completely pull apart the policies that we have done for 8 years. Hence, the change in the election, if it occurs, this pent up frustration turns to optimism. And I think you see, even if it's a 30-day or 1 month, optimism will blow into Nigeria, you will see the stock market simply based on optimism go up. You will see the Naira gain value. You will see the joy and the consumption happen immediately. And that would help the economy. So it's like a tee up. It's going to be teed up for the next president to grab that tee and run. And that's going to come from whoever the electorate believe is the change candidate in this election. The biggest issue is the economy, not even insecurity. I think we've been reminded in the last 1 month that the economy in Lagos, we don't see bandits in Lagos, but we see no cash. People are suffering, they can't buy food even though they have cash. There's things, riots on the roads, shotguns in banking halls, because it's all about the economy. Everyone on this space has a cousin or a nephew or an auntie or whatever that is unemployed. Everyone on this space, I'm not even unemployed. This guy is educated, but he's unemployed. He's done his bit. Good boy, ate his conflicts, just unemployed. So what's going to happen is that if people elect change, it makes the job easier for the next president, because the country would have teed it up for him. They would expect more from that change guy, but they would give that guy more. What killed Buhari was this fuel subsidy nonsense. He tried to appease the talakawas, the quote unquote poor people, by not increasing the price of fuel. But today, the price of fuel has gone up from when he came to office. Also, what killed him? Exchange rate. He tried to keep the Naira strong to also help the talakawas, the poor. But today, Naira is 750. So intentions are not a strategy. If a president comes today, PTF, some post I don't know what PTF, the Petroleum Trust Fund, was an increase in fuel price. But then we had PTF. PTF was the first time in my life I saw the government building roads. In my life. Building roads, building hospitals, equipping schools. Ask your dad, PTF. Till today, you go to some rural areas, it's PTF roads that were built at that time. Crude oil price was less than $10 when PTF was done. Crude oil price today is almost 100. We are borrowing to repay what we borrowed. Hence, the summary is this: if you want to give Nigeria an opportunity, I think you should vote for change, because that will create a catalyst in the economy simply based on optimism. I'm not talking about fundamentals, just the feel good effect that this has actually occurred will jumpstart the economy and will create the means for the incoming president to get things done. If you want the same, just a better version of the same, then vote for the status quo. 1 week, you have the power. It's no longer in the hands of the politicians, it's now in your hands. After this time, nobody should compete in Nigeria again. Nobody. They gave you the power. They gave you the ball. The goalpost is empty. They just kick the ball to the open net. It's your call. So after this time, don't come and say government did not do, government did. It's on you now. On that note, let me just thank Mr. Wilson for not just agreeing to come, but agreeing to stay. We want to bring an economist to give us the economic story behind this personal Naira thing that we've heard all back. And I think done justice to it, sir. We've understood a bit more about cash in circulation, what it means for the economy. We didn't even touch the economy. We're going to talk about the economy, but this cash thing was just on the radar. We said, let's get out of here, and that's what we stayed. I'm sure we'll bring you back to talk more about the economy. I'm very, very sure about that. So also say thank you for coming, and to all the folks that have tuned in to listen. I appreciate you all. I know the economy sometimes gets wonky. It's not sexy, but it's your money, and we're talking about your money. The Twitter is recorded. The podcast is also recorded, so you can go back in and listen. It's a 3-hour listen, but I think it's worth your while, right? Next week, Saturday, I would like to do something Twitter-ish during the election. I don't want to do this politics thing. We'll see what we can do. But please, guys, if you're not voting, support the people that are voting. If you have a house near polling centers, ask your friends, where are you going to vote? If you have a BQ, put folks there. If you have water, put water outside your house and say you can take free water. If you whatever you can do for the elections, do. If people are voting, buy them recharge card and give them, hey, this is for you. Take recharge card and take pictures of your polling booth. Support people. If you're an employee, please make Friday work-free day. Let folks travel to where they're going to stay on Friday to vote. Do your own part. Don't say it doesn't concern you. You've seen what happened this 1 week. You had cash, your workers didn't have cash. You see what it cost, Abi? So do your own part. Work free day on Friday. If you have the means, support people to go and vote. Put water in front of your house. Give directions. Just be a citizen, be a neighbor, be a brother or a sister, right? Or be no gender for those. Yeah. All right. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much. So Wilson, thank you. I do appreciate you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, everyone.
All right, guys.
Have a good.
Excellent. On that note, we're gonna call it a day. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you guys next week, and bye.